now so that we can begin. I'd like to welcome all of you to the study session portion of the meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Today is November 30th, 2021, and we are meeting at the district office located at 9361 South, 300 East in Sandy, Utah. The first item on our study session agenda is an update on strategic planning. And we have Superintendent Robbins will join us. He had to step out of the room for a moment. And so I will just go ahead and turn time over to you, Drew Shantz, who is with Education Elements. And if you would like to give us an update, and then we'll let Superintendent Robbins give his thoughts following yours.
Sure, Nancy. Drew, before you start, let me just ask if there are going to be slides that are being put up. Is there any way we can get those remotely?
I don't think there are any slides.
That's correct. There are no slides for today.
Okay. No slides. Okay. Okay, Drew, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Want to just take some time today to do a quick recap of kind of where we've been and what we're looking forward to accomplishing when we head out to see you all again next week. I'm going to apologize if there's any background noise. I'm walking around downtown Cincinnati right now. So our first two planning team meetings are really an opportunity for planning team members to get to know one another, understand their role in the strategic planning process, and then really start to dig into their respective focus areas. On the first day, we really focused on building up psychological safety and making sure that team members were able to be fully present and contribute fully to the process. Then we moved into kind of defining what were the specific challenges that we wanted to solve within each of the focus areas. And then from there on day two, we started to expand on those challenge statements, turn them into impact statements, and started to paint a more vivid picture of what we wanted the future of the district to look like, sound like, feel like for all stakeholders. And from there, planning team members really got in the weeds of the strategic initiatives that would support those respective visions within each of the focus areas. And they were tasked when at the conclusion of day two, they were tasked with kind of socializing and sharing some of those ideas that they generated with other members of the community to continue to gather their input in a very casual and informal manner so that we can make sure that more voices continue to be heard throughout the process. And what we are kind of we're taking the work that has been done last month when we met and really diving back into exactly where we started next Monday, rather. We recognize that a lot of the planning, each of the planning teams is at a very different spot. And that's very much okay. And there's different number of people on each of the planning teams. There's different challenges that each of those teams are grappling with. And it's a really complex process, and it's certainly not easy. So with that recognition in mind, we're really kind of switching our approach for days 3 and 4 to be much more differentiated and targeted towards the specific needs of each of the planning teams. So what you'll notice as you participate next Monday and Tuesday is that we're going to set kind of the expectation for be very clear on setting the expectation for what the end of this phase of the process looks like, and really telling planning team members the negotiables and the non-negotiables for what we're looking for. We also and in doing so, allowing planning teams to kind of navigate that process as they best see fit, and with the guidance that we're able to provide them. There are going to be some planning teams that are really rocking and rolling. They have very solid strategic initiatives in mind. They're already getting into the success criteria, and they really don't need a lot of hand-holding along the way. While there are some other teams that are a little bit slower to progress through the process so far. So we want to make sure that we, as facilitators, Shelby, Megan, myself, are able to provide some more targeted supports for them in order to get them to where they need to be. Something else that we also want to remind planning teams is that their work, while integral and essential to the strategic planning process, they are part of their role is to provide recommendations, suggestions, and essentially submit a draft of what the strategic plan will look like to the steering team. The steering team will meet the week following next, really do some more of that finalization work and align on what the final plan or close to final plan is going to look like. We think that it's important to find planning team members of that. They are not the final deciders. They are not writing anything in ink, so to speak. They're purely operating pencils in hand. Things will be erased, things will be changed, and that's okay. So we just want to make sure that while planning team members recognize the importance and frankly the gravity of the tasks that they are being asked to do, this is not the end all be all, and there are other layers of the process before the strategic plan has sort of a seal of approval, so to speak. So the next 2 days, or Monday and Tuesday of next week, are really going to be focused on a differentiated approach to make sure each group is getting the support that they need. Questions are being answered as they come up, and we're able to let groups kind of progress the best way that they see fit, but keeping in mind the non-negotiable, the end goal that we want all groups to be able to arrive at by the time we are done on Tuesday, which is going to be a completed set of impact statements, strategic initiatives that will support those impact statements, as well as draft success criteria for how we will know that we're successful in completing those strategic initiatives as the plan unfolds and gets carried out. So that's the kind of recap of the last time we met, our hopes for the next time that we meet, and I'm open to any questions that you all may have for me.
Okay, thank you. Let me just check with Superintendent Rick. Do you have anything to add at this point, or should we take some questions? Okay. All right. Questions, board? Mrs. Nybauer?
Hi, Drew. Thank you for being with us. A few questions I have. I have received a lot of feedback. Probably the biggest amount of feedback was regarding into what happens after this and what is the timeline and the process for the rest of this strategic planning, where I have tried to explain that there is another committee after this one. And at the end of the day, these recommendations go to the board. I was thinking it would be helpful, and I don't know if you mind doing this, but it might be nice for all of these folks that are giving their time to understand completely what the process is, so that they don't operate under, maybe an assumption that what is determined at the end of Tuesday is how it's going to stay. I think after that amount of time, people feel, some ownership that way, which is great because that means they've been invested in the process. And just to be clear of kind of what the steps and process are at the beginning of the meeting with a timeline so that they know what steps are happening after Tuesday. Would that be something we could do?
You read my mind, Holly. That's exactly how we wanted to start out the session on Monday, and really make sure that there is a consistent level of clarity across the board, so that everyone understands the specific role that planning team members are playing, and then what the steps are going to be afterwards. So that was part of the feedback that we got last time, and definitely want to make sure that we start off with that, establishing that level of clarity before we even dive into continuing the planning work.
Great. And then you mentioned that there will be non-negotiables. Could you clarify that? What are the non-negotiables? I understand what the end goal is, but you mentioned quite a few times there's non-negotiables. What is that?
So that I'm referring to what we want to make sure every planning team is able to accomplish. We don't, and that is the impact statement, strategic initiatives, and success criteria.
Mm-hmm.
We need a complete set, or at least a safe enough to share set of those things from each of the planning teams, so that we can share that with the steering team the following week. negotiables are kind of how planning teams arrive at that final deliverable. We know, and as I mentioned, we know that things are kind of progressing at different paces. So we just want to allow for an environment that ensures that each team is able to do their best work and kind of progress at their own pace. So the negotiable is the how, or the process by which they get to that non-negotiable, which is that final deliverable.
Is the final. Okay, great. And then you talked about it, but in that same vein, so some of these committees that have already drafted their impact statements and already kind of looking at steps. If they're that far ahead, and then there's some that are behind, how are you planning on navigating that through the two meetings? If there's a committee that finishes early, is it just the Monday, or how are you talked about a differentiating approach? What's the plan that way? I know some of the feedback I've gotten is those that have already drafted their impact statements and have started thinking about steps and success criteria. I know they were to take it out to the community and neighbors and get feedback. But some of the feedback I got from the participants was that some of the exercises, if they're already kind of ready to go and close to the end deliverable that you want, if some of those exercises they can move past if they're already through, would that be one of those negotiables you're saying if they're getting closer to that end product?
Exactly. Yeah. So what we're working on putting together digital workbooks for each of the groups to kind of put all of their final products in. And in those workbooks are going to be kind of like a pacing guide for how they should progress towards that final deliverable. If there are groups that are kind of zooming along and really far ahead, there could be a world where if that group reaches a consensus that they have a final deliverable that everybody is happy with, they might not necessarily need to meet for as long as a group that is taking a little bit longer to tackle that process. And we don't know yet which groups fall into which of those kind of pacing categories. We kind of have to make that determination on Monday when we take stock of what work has been done between the last time and this time for each of the groups, and get updated impact statements and strategic initiatives from each one.
Okay, great. I have another question, but I'll let someone else go and take a break for a minute. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Millerberg.
Yeah, thank you. I just have one question and maybe one comment. The first is, I know that Clarine and maybe somebody else and I are assigned to two different teams. And maybe it's also because I missed the what I call there's no notice like no notice meeting before we started on the Monday, the meeting that was called at the last minute to tell people that are chairing committees what to do. I was involved with a community council meeting that I prioritized in front of strategic planning. But I find it really difficult to try to move from one committee to another and make it work and feel like I'm not missing something at the table where I'm not. So let's go to that one. Then I'll just come up with my comment at the end of that response.
Hey, your question was what specifically?
What is specifically what do you expect those of us to do that are assigned to two different teams?
So it's tricky, right? Because we have
exactly.
We have 10 planning teams and 7 board members. So what I would probably suggest is, since you've had the opportunity now to interact with both of those groups, you might get a sense that one of those groups might need a little bit more of your attention than another one does. So I would leave that up to you to make that call and see which one you might want to lean more into. And that's also why we have representatives from the district on each of those teams. So you can exercise some shared leadership with that particular individual, and kind of norm on what role you want to play because you are juggling those two groups. It's not an ideal situation, but it was very important to us that the board was represented on to the planning teams. So we're just trying to make that work as best as we can, and I do recognize that that can be a challenge.
Okay, I feel like what you told me is exactly what I was thinking, and I don't know a whole lot more now than I did before I asked the question. Second comment, where these meetings go from 4 to 7, I appreciate very much that at the last meeting people brought snacks, but if I'm going to maintain my girlish figure, I don't want to sit around and eat candy and popcorn and all that stuff for 3 hours when 4 o'clock is too early to have dinner and 7 o'clock is way too late to have it. We need to have something that's more meal-like than candy and chips and popcorn and all those things that I love to eat, but I try not to.
Okay, I can take that to the folks who are working on the food and provide that feedback to them.
Okay, I'll just interject here for a minute. Mont, do you have a menu suggestion? I know the first meeting there were some like tortilla wraps. In the second meeting, we had some sandwiches. Yes, it's not a full meal, but do you have a suggestion for menu for next time?
I did not see sandwiches with the team I was at, so maybe that was something that different teams did different stuff.
Okay, we will make sure that that's something's available.
Sandwiches would be nice, but I think it's not fair to expect people to either A, not eat, or B, eat junk.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else have questions or comments? Mrs. Neubauer.
I've had feedback from one of the groups talking about how it seemed the group was going very specific in one direction that wouldn't be so much of an impact statement. Are you, as the moderator, are you going to be working with groups to make sure that the impact statement is what it's intended to be? I know these parents are feeling kind of limited and restricted from the direction that was headed, and maybe felt like at one point they didn't feel that they could contribute as much because the group was going in a direction that they didn't agree with. And it was pretty specific. It seemed more like steps to get to the goal rather than an impact statement. So could you describe to me a little bit about how Ed Elements is going to help those impact statements if they are too specific and narrowed in scope?
Yeah, that's something that we noticed as well. So appreciate you calling that out. In those digital workbooks that I had referenced, there's going to be a dedicated page that kind of provides some examples as well as some criteria for what makes a good impact statement, what makes a good strategic initiative, and what makes a good success criteria, piece of success criteria. We're concerned about the grain size and kind of making sure that it fits into that kind of hierarchy of sections there. But we're certainly more concerned about the process by which folks go through and ensuring that what they are creating kind of adheres to best practices of a strategic plan, but the actual content of what is in that particular impact statement or strategic initiative, that's something that we're leaving up to each of the teams. So we'll provide the guidance, the actual substance, as long as it fits within kind of the parameters or the guidelines for what makes a good strategic initiative, for example. We will leave that piece up to you.
Mm-hmm. And then I know some parents that were invited, not by myself, but maybe their administrator or something, that could go to some of the meetings, but not maybe these ones next week. To be sure that we have enough parent representation, can we invite others if we've gotten emails that they won't be there next week? Or
I hesitate to do that at this point because we've been together with these groups for 6 hours already, and there's been some momentum built up. Perhaps, are you getting the sense, Holly, that there is a group that's going to be significantly kind of understaffed?
I just think the ratio of parents that are there is probably not what we intended.
When you say parents to district staff?
Yeah.
Okay. So not enough parents, too many district staff members in maybe one or two situations.
District members are very valuable. I hate to, I don't want to eliminate.
But the balance is also important.
Yes.
So I hear you on that.
Yes. Just some parents that are unable to attend this next week, and just wondering if they could find a parent in their place or something like that. I know that was one of the things we were so excited about with Ed Elements, is how great you guys are at gathering community support and input. And so just trying to maintain the integrity of that.
Yeah, the only reason I hesitate is just because I wouldn't want that person to come in and have a lot of the legwork done already and not feel like can contribute fully to the process, because a lot has been accomplished. But I think we could consider that on a case by case basis, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to catch that person up beforehand. But I hesitate just because I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone who is coming in kind of halfway through the process, and I can see how that could be potentially uncomfortable or confusing for that individual. So I think we can certainly consider it. I'm just kind of trying to weigh the costs with the benefits of doing that, and letting all groups kind of take that approach. And we don't have a relatively high degree of consistency in terms of group membership. But it's like I said, I think it's something that we can consider if there's a group that balance is really thrown off.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Wrigley?
Yeah, just a quick question for Drew. Maybe continuing this, would it be possible you just send an email out to the parents and ask who plans on attending, and if they plan on attending the whole time? Because I know last time we had parents, we were able to make it, but only for the last hour or two. It might be interesting to find out if there's an issue or if there's not an issue by just asking what days they will be able to attend.
Yes, I can do that. That's a good idea, because the calendar invite is not necessarily an accurate representation of who will attend. So why don't I send out another email this week to just let us know if they do not plan on attending, so then we can make that calculation on potentially adding some additional folks in as necessary.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just asking if they're going to attend not at all or part of the meeting, because
Yep.
We had parents that came in halfway and they were able to get them up to speed for the first part of the meeting. But those that may not come, if we have a significant number not there, we'll know before the meeting if we get some idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Mrs. Oakes.
Hi, Drew. Thanks so much for all of your help. I've really actually enjoyed the committee that I've been a part of. I feel like it's exciting, and to see some of the momentum and things that will come out of this whole process. And I'm loving having a chance to read what some of the other committees are coming up with. I think it's going to be such a great and effective thing for the district. One of the questions I have comes out of reading the new school rules book. And I thought to myself, so many of the principles in this book are helpful in understanding how we should be approaching this strategic planning. Particularly, some of the things about safe enough, are ideas safe enough to try? Is there, a way to defend no questions of data? I wonder whether or not there's some of these principles that we could have to kind of a quick rap sheet as, committee members to kind of look over and just discuss briefly to consider. I doubt that most of them can finish, a 200-page book before Monday and Tuesday's meeting, but I do feel like so many of these principles are extraordinarily sound, and particularly for the process we're involved in.
I think it's a great idea. And we could pull out a couple of those rules that are specifically applicable at this stage in the process. And we've got some one pagers on each of them that I can lay out for some pre-reading, and we can do a quick overview of how to apply some of those principles. But yeah, absolutely. I love that idea.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent, do you have anything to add?
I just also, Drew, want to thank you and your team for all of your assistance, and share my appreciation to all of our staff and parents that participated. It was exciting. I got to just kind of weave through all 10 planning teams and listen in, and just the level of investment and dedication by every team was excellent. And I think it's continuing this process forward, considering all of the issues and the pandemic and everything that's still occurring. It's just great to see people dedicated to, the future and helping us build this out. So appreciate all your work, Drew, and everybody that's contributed.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Drew. And we look forward to seeing you next week as we continue this work.
Alrighty, thanks, y'all. We'll see you on Monday.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
You too. Okay, next item is the 2020-21 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. And I will turn time over to Leon Wilcox, Business Administrator.
Thank you, President Tingy. I'm sure you've all read all 130 pages of the report. I'll just take any questions you may have.
That's why I thought
Yeah.
for your report.
Right? True. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just so you know, we had our audit committee meeting yesterday. Mon is our audit chair, with also Clarine and Amber in attendance. We had a virtual meeting. I'll turn some time over them at the end if they would like any. We had our external auditors on the Zoom. They went over our annual audit report. There were really no issues that they found. But again, you can we can defer to them as well. The audit reports, there are 4 of them. They are found on board docs, and we ask, as we do every year, we ask you to approve them as part of the consent agenda. Also on board docs is our annual comprehensive financial report. I'm going to call it the ACFR, if you won't mind. Giving you each a copy. Again, it's on board docs. It's also on our website today. I apologize. There was a little printing issue. We put 3-hole punch in the book, but that being said, we didn't want to reprint them. So there's a couple pages. Can you throw up those slides, Julie? Didn't I give them to Cindy? Yeah, maybe I'll been to you. You didn't get them on board. They're on board docs. Okay. Yeah. Oh no, just not 4 pages. There's 4 pages out there, isn't there? Yeah. Yeah. So I apologize for that. Anyway, we'll get going. Don't want to just on the shortage of time. Well, Cindy and Julie try to pull that up. Yeah, it's be those 4 slides. It says ACFR slides. There are the annual report's about 130 pages long. Obviously, we don't want to go through it, but there are 4 pages that I feel like are important that I'd like to just go over with you as the board. On your book here, there's an introductory with a letter from Dr. Robbins and myself, and then our org chart, listing of all you as the board members, the report, the awards that we've got in the last few years. And then when it says financial, that's our auditor's report. Again, they gave us an unmodified or a clean opinion on our financial statements, meaning you can rely on these numbers as being correct. There's, again, 4 pages I'd like to just go over with you. I'm going to start on page 72. Again, when we get that pulled up, we'll also have it show it up there. But this is what I call, again, you can look under the slides under board docs or just on the book itself. Again, I'm going to start on page 72. You look at the basic accounting equation is take your assets less your liabilities, and that gives you your fund balance, right? And so we just want to go over what our fund balance is. Right now, at the end of June 30th, 2021, our fund balance was just under $76.9 million. That's about a $530,000 increase from the previous year. Now, we categorize that fund balance in a couple different areas. One area is, again, if you look at the slides that I've handwritten notes there, we put aside 5% of our budgeted expenditures for this year as a stabilization fund, okay? That's about $16.1 million. And then we have our GASB, which is in our vacation payouts for those eligible employees. That is another, we add 5% onto that, what our actuary tells us the cost is, and that's another 16.1 million. We set that aside for those employees. Oh, thank you, Julie, for pulling that up. You can see the blue, and I apologize for the chicken scratch there. Fine, and then a couple items down, you'll see our open purchase orders. Those are, we had POs, again, supply chain issues. So we had a lot of POs that we hadn't closed out there at 1.7 million. So we got to carry that money over. And then we allow our schools to carry over their supplies, their textbook money, their technology money. And that's about $5 million that they carry over. And then the last two lines there, it's $8 million. Again, we've talked about our construction, how construction prices have escalated. So we're going to have to set aside some of our balance to complete these projects we're under. And that's $8 million. We've talked about that quite a bit in the past there. So we set that aside. And then finally, the last one is what we call our unassigned balance. And that's $28 million. Now that seems like a lot of money, and it certainly is. But that is basically 1 month's worth of expenses for us. So that is money we really have to, that's really our balance right there, is that amount right there. But I always like to say we're 1 month ahead of the game. I think I say that every year. So that is how much we spend on a monthly basis. I also want to know, I didn't highlight it, but if you look on up, well, it's on the next page there. But again, you can see our fund balance, the increase from 1 year to the next. Going to the next page, which is on page 73 there, which is over, you can see that there. So again, a couple things I would just want to point out there. If you look down under, I didn't circle it, but if you look under so what we have is our budgeted money, our actual, and then the difference between the budget and the actual, and what happened last year. One thing I just want to point out is our federal money. Again, we got quite a bit of ESSER money. So last year, we got about 12.2 million of federal dollars, but this year was up to 21.3. Again, that's all that stimulus ESSER funds that we received. And we still got a lot for the next 3 years, this year and the next 2. Again, our revenues is up on top. So you can see our taxes, our state funds, and our federal money. Then you look down under expenses. We always like to say, as the board, we talk about our budget a lot, but we also need to say what actually happened. And this is what this schedule tells us here. So our total expenses for last year were $313.1 million. We budgeted, or you approved a budget of 316.6. That's what you allowed us to spend. So we were about $3.5 million under, which is about 1.1%, which is typically where we'd be. Sometimes we've been closer to 2, but that's about, again, where we always like to be, between 1 and 2% under our budget there. You can see there that I circled the top there. People is our biggest expense. That's nearly 88% between salaries and benefits there. And then if you look down, again, our increase, we had more money in than we had out, of about 533,000. It gives us our ending fund balance of 76.9. So any questions there? Just for comparison purposes, this was our 12th year. Our first year of operating back in 09, 010, we spent 190 million. So you can see how much our budget has grown in 12 years. So that is what we call our income statement there. The third schedule I want to show you is our insurance fund. Now we're self-insured, meaning our employees, as they go to the doctors, we pay their claims here. Okay, so that's insurance fund. We accumulate resources and then pay out those claims as they come due from doctors' offices and hospitals. We've had 2 very, very good years with our insurance. You can see how in 2020, our balance went up 5.5 million. And last year it went up 3.5 million to give us an ending balance of just under 17 million. That's 16.8 million there is our insurance balance. Typically we spend about 2.8 million a month on insurance. So we like to have at least a 4-month reserve. So that's, 11 to 12 million dollars there. One of the things that in our negotiations, starting in January, the district will actually pay more of the premiums and the employees will pay less. So that's starting in January that I think employees saw that when they completed their open enrollment there. But we do want to say that our insurance claims this year have increased quite a bit. We've had more hospitalizations. We've had a couple big cancer type issues out there. So they've gone up quite a bit, but we're fortunate we do have this nice buffer there in our insurance fund to help us through that with that. So there's our insurance fund there. The last schedule I want to show you is just our and sorry, this is tilted landscape, but it's this is what we call our taxable valuations. So everybody knows, your house has gone up. This is from this year to 10 years back. And you can see our assessed valuation has increased from basically 15.8 billion, again, that's with the B, up to about 27.7 billion over that 10-year period. It's a 76% increase. Now we're somewhat built out, right? So there has been some new homes and new businesses built in the district, but not, for the most part, we've been built out since our existence. But everybody knows what has happened to their price, the home value, the value of the home over the last 10 years. It's gone up dramatically. You can see that difference there where it says primary homes from 9.3 billion up to 16.3 billion. A few more homes, no doubt, but not a whole lot there. And the same with the commercial property, basically doubling, which we love to see, the commercial property going up from 4 billion up to 8 billion. So that's very good as we issue bonds. And in January, we're going to bring you back ask you to adopt a resolution to refund some more bonds. This helps as we can drop the number of years that we pay out on these bonds. So we'll be bringing that back to you in January resolution for that. But this is really good news here as well. So with that, again, I'm sure everybody's read all 130 pages. I'll ask if there's any questions. And also I just want to thank Gary Warwood for helping put this together. Gary's out, unable to be here today. He's had some minor surgery yesterday and will be out this week, but big thank you to him.
Thank you, Leon. Any questions or comments, board? Oh, Mr. Wrigley and then Mrs. Nybauer.
First off, I want to thank you. About 2 years ago when COVID started coming and I started seeing all the expenses, I really was worried as to what's going to happen to our budget and if we'd stay afloat. You've done an exceptional job of keeping the boat afloat through all this. It's just been amazing with all the extra costs that we've had, all the extra, there's been just a lot of money coming in and coming out. Just so to see this budget reflect that and to show us that we're still in a pretty good position despite everything that's going on around us. That's good to understand, especially since when we bond, it helps us keep our AAA bonding. One question I do have is, since we are self-insured and as we've been going into this COVID this month and then not next month and this month again, what do we do as far as self-insurance if something does happen in regards to a pandemic that's really causing our insurance to go up? What's our plan B in this, and how do we self-fund ourselves? Do we have a backup or something, a catastrophic fund or something?
Yeah, we do have catastrophic insurance so if we do have a claim, someone has a catastrophic event, and we do have those on an annual basis of over 225,000. We do recoup that amount. So
Okay.
our cap is at 225,000.
Okay, yeah, because I mean the expenses for some of the COVID care is quite expensive.
We've had cancer.
If
and
that happens at some point, then that would be a great hit to this budget. But we do have catastrophic care that should be able to deal with that. So, well, thank you. Again, thank you for.
So we do feel
estimating.
happy about this. I do think that 16 may come down a little bit this year. We'll have to see as we play out the last 7 months of this year. But yeah, we have had some big claims from July up till now on our insurance.
We've also moved to more of a self-insured or HSA type of thing. Is that helping as far as cost and stuff? Or?
Yeah, our HSA, we have about 55% of our employees on that. That's helped us a lot. Keep cost under control. Yeah.
Mrs. Nybauer.
Thank you, Leon, for this report and your proficiency and talent with this. The larger the numbers, the more difficult it is, I know, to keep everything balanced. And I have a couple questions. So you showed us that chart over the 10 years and how our increase was 76%. And our three ways of funding are the WPU, and second would be the property taxes, and third is like Title I and the extra funds we get, right?
Federal funds.
So yes. So my question is, obviously we have had some new builds, right? Which really increase the revenue from property tax. Has the percentage of the property tax that is afforded to Canyons District also gone up in the last 10 years? Or is it's always maintained the same percentage?
There's under Utah law, there's what they call the certified tax rate.
Yes.
Which means you can only bring in the same amount of money you did the previous year,
Mhm.
with the exception of growth. So
Mhm.
new houses, new businesses come on, then you can bring that
Mhm.
revenue in. But other than that, you have to stay the same. We've only done a tax increase one time. That was 2 years ago when we did our big teacher raise. So that
Mhm.
percentage is still,
Mhm.
this percentage would be the same as it was a year ago that way, if that makes sense, outside any new growth there. So, yeah.
Mhm. And so as of 2 years ago, then it stayed the same.
Yeah.
And what's the percentage? What is it, like 30 something of the property tax?
Our budget is roughly 40% property tax, 50% state, and 10% federal.
Oh, I don't mean of our budget. I mean of the patrons and the community. So of their property tax.
Of their tax statement. And it
Mhm.
will vary between cities because each city has a different rate.
A little different grade.
Right, okay. But it's in that 52 to 55 range, depending on the city that you reside in. Comes to
Mhm.
Canyon School District, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So a little over half. Yeah. Then commercial under state law, people can remove the 45%
Mhm.
of their home value and then only pay on the 55%. Except for commercial, you do have to pay 100% on that. Yeah. But did that answer your question? Basically, so if I got my tax notice, I'd have to look at the percentage, but I think in Draper, it's around 55, 50. Well, we're just taking your total property.
Your total property tax is what
Total property tax statement, how much comes to each school district. It's around that 52 to 55%.
So in the 76% increase we've had in the last decade, we would attribute some of that to new growth, right? Commercial and residential.
I think most of that 76% is just your house going up in value, my house going up in value. That's
Okay.
what, there is some new growth, no doubt, but that's most of it is just
Mhm.
people's homes. 2011, you remember we were still in a recession, right? Home values were
Right.
down, right? You can see what's happened in the last 10 years. And we do expect that to go up another 4 or 5% this calendar year in 2021. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So,
Let's see.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Mrs. Arnold.
So I wanted to pass on what the auditors said about Leon and just specifically about Leon, that his jokes really aren't that funny. No, not really. That Leon and Gary have been great working with them, that they have been responsive, they've been attentive, they answered all their questions, and they provided work in a timely fashion. And I just wanted to pass it on to you that I felt like when the auditors give us that kind of feedback, that we should be appreciative or more appreciative of what they do and how they do it, because it reflects on everybody, but mostly on them, about how they look at their job and how they really want to put forth a good impression for all of us. And so thank you, Leon, and thank you, Gary, for that and for always taking good care of us financially.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you, Mrs. Arnold, for sharing that. It's always nice to know that other people see how wonderful you all are, our team is here. Okay, any other comments or questions on this one? All right, while Mr. Wilcox is there, we'll move on to small capital projects for 2022-23 year, and turn the time back to Mr. Wilcox.
Okay, thank you. We'll proceed with our small capital projects. We always come about this time of year as we need to really plan ahead for what we're going to do in this summer. You know, when you look at our school calendar, we're really only off about 10 weeks in the summer. So come the last day of July, last day of school, which is usually 1st of June, we have to have everybody ready to go moving forward on any project that's really going to impact a school, operating a school. So we have to start planning right now and then get contractors on board and move forward with that. So coming to you with our list today, and then we will have engineers and architects work with us designing these. We'll be soliciting bids as soon as we can, hopefully maybe even in January. We put February and March, but we need to really get going on some of these. These costs that are over $80,000 will of course come right back to you for your approval. Then we'll begin construction when the school year ends. And if it doesn't impact the schools, there's some work we can do outside the building. You know, we'll try to start that before, again, with the goal to have everything done by mid-August when school kicks back off again. That being said, I'll show you our list, but we always have far more needs than we have dollars. And so, you know, we talked about our bond projects, how much they've cost. Again, they've turned out great, but they've cost us quite a bit. But and also this upcoming summer, it's gonna take a lot of our facility services resources to move move into the new Glacier Hills, you know, combining the two schools and also in the Peruvian Park. And also, I should also mention what you approved last week, moving Diamond Ridge over to Bellevue. So that's going to take a lot of our resources there. So that will limit the things we can do. But that being said, here are our proposed projects that we do intend to complete this summer. Just quickly go through these. We have 6 playgrounds we really need to upgrade for ADA purposes. And the 3 most important ones we want to do this summer. That's Willow Canyon, Sunrise, and Granite. We've had some issues at a couple of those schools. We really need to get those addressed there. The next one would be carpet replacement at Carper View and Lone Peak. If you've been into some of the schools where we've torn out the old carpet, put the new carpet in, it really adds a whole lot. Adds a whole lot of environment. You know, there's really improves the environment at the school. So we're excited about those. You know, anytime you replace the carpet in your house, my wife and I did that a few years ago. It really adds to it. And it's just like the same with a school building there. I should note most of these are elementary schools, right? We feel like our secondary schools are in a pretty good shape, being new or renovated. A couple secondary schools there, but our main focus is going to be on these elementaries that are not rebuilt. But then the fourth one down, lighting upgrades. We're going to focus on several schools over the next several years, but we're going to start with Canyon View and Brookwood. We're going to replace, it's these schools where we put in the solar tubes a few years ago. We want to capture and harvest more natural light. So we're going to take out the old fixtures and put in new LED fixtures with sensors. So that should reduce our electric bill and make us more conservative that way, but also add more light, better light into these classrooms. One of the secondary schools that we need to do is resurface the track at Corner Canyon. We want to bring that up to the standard Alta, Hillcrest, and Brighton have a different surface. And so we want to do Corner Canyon this summer, Hillcrest next summer, to bring those up to that same standard that should last us a good 10 years or so on the track. And then another thing that we've done the last several years is irrigation replacements. At Altera a couple of years ago, we did the whole new parking lot, if you remember that. But we did most of the irrigation system then. But there was a piece that we did not get done. That was about a quarter of it. So we want to complete that and then do a new replacement at Lone Peak. Again, we have a few schools left with the old steel piping. We put in new PVC piping and the new controls there. It makes us more efficient. Then we have some parking lot repairs, not whole replacements, but some resurfacing and adding a few spots at Eastmont. That would be another secondary school, of course, and then Sprucewood. These are estimates. We do have enough to cover if these estimates are below, but we're trying to be as conservative as possible and think this will come to about $2.5 million on those projects this year. That means that with that as the backdrop, we do intend to complete all these. There are some other ones that we are still evaluating right now. Just want to go over those with you. One of those is we talked about in our financial report, we need to move $8 million to complete these projects. Some of that money is going to go to complete Diamond Ridge as we move into the new Bellevue building. We really like that building because it's broken up in pods, and it's actually going to be very ideal for Diamond Ridge and Entrada and the youth academy there, because we can lock off these pods. So it's very nice. But we do need to go in and fix the restrooms. They're for children right now. We also need to we want to put in some laundry facilities and shower facilities for these students and another entrance there. We think that's going to cost us, we're looking at two phases, a phase in 2022 and a phase in 23. We think this first phase is going to be in that $1.8 million range. Second phase will probably be the same, but that will be next year. That will be looking at FACS classes and science labs, converting a couple classrooms there. Also, one thing we're looking at is Alta's baseball and softball fields. We had to go back and do some work on those to make sure they're safe and compliant, but they still need to look at some resurfacing there. But we know that's going to be very expensive. They'll have to play this season on them, but we'll look and see, do we look at doing that this summer or maybe holding off another summer? We're looking at we are doing Hillcrest fields this upcoming summer, and there's some things we're going to try there that we may want to bring over when we do Alta. So we may wait till the summer of 23 before we look at Alta's fields. But we want to bring that to put that in the back of your minds that we are looking at something there on those ball fields. Also, another thing at Alta, and that we've had, the great students come, and that's the band room. One of the things we're looking at is we're still looking at a couple options. The one thing will probably be an option, and we hope to tide us over for another 2 to 3, 4 years. It may be a short-term option. That's renovating what they call the driver's ed room and making that into an instrument storage and a percussion room. There's a little bit of difference. There's about a 30-foot walk from the existing band room down to the driver's ed room, not too far. So but they are fairly close to each other. But we know we have to do something there. And we think this will be a fix for a few years. We are looking at some longer term options, either in the new PAC building or even adding on to the building, but those get quite expensive. So we're trying to do something that can do our best to accommodate that growing program, which we love, for the next few years that way. again, we may bring you back more information on that. Also at CTech, they'll be starting a pharmacy tech program. We're very excited about that. Since Diamond Ridge is in that classroom now, they won't be exiting until really August. So sometime in the next spring, a little over a year from now, we'll be looking at remodeling a space over there for the pharmacy tech program. That won't happen this summer, but it will be part of the 23 budget. And then also one thing we're looking at is try to improve our elementary camera systems for all the schools that haven't been rebuilt. We know that there's been some issues there that we really need to improve that. That takes us into this next slide here. And that's the upcoming legislative session. Hard to believe that's going to be upon us here in a couple months, but on the Jlc priorities, there's a $250 million one-time request for funds. Dr. Robbins and we got a request yesterday on how we'd spend this, and so we responded back. But and it also should be said that the USBE on their request has also that same $250 million. It's not one of their top 10, but the top 10 are mostly ongoing items. This would be a one-time. But we're always concerned about how this allocation will occur. Obviously, we feel it needs to be on a per student basis if it does come. Other districts may look at, high growth areas with building new buildings, but would want this on a per student basis. Our preliminary use would be to look at these camera systems. We'd do more playground upgrades and use some of this funds for the Diamond Ridge renovation. But we'll stay tuned on that as the legislature plays this out with us. Okay. If they did it on a per student basis, our allocation would be roughly a little over $11 million is what we calculate. So that's a big allocation there. And we always are looking ahead because, we just have to with contractors and whatnot. So summer of 22 will soon be upon us, but the summer of 23 will also be upon us, we think, before we know it. These are some of the projects we're looking at moving forward. That would be the other 3 playgrounds. That would be at Bella Vista, Canyon View, and Lone Peak. We're doing Corner Canyons track this summer. Next summer, we plan to do Hillcrest, same thing. We're also looking at the elevator at Eastmont. We also know we're going to have to move the storage underground fuel tanks by 2024 at transportation. They're going to have to come out of the ground that will be a fun one. That's for EPA standards there. So then we'll have other things we'll bring to you on carpeting and irrigation and lighting. So with that, I don't want to take any more time, but I have to answer any questions.
Any questions, board? Superintendent.
Yeah, just one comment, Leanne. Thank you for putting this together. One thing that we talked about is the soccer fields at Corner Canyon. I was just wondering if we're evaluating.
Yeah, we'll evaluate that.
Those.
There's a little water table.
Part of it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Wrigley.
So just to clarify on the Diamond Ridge one, is the intent that they move into the new facility this August? And that we have these things done during the summer, preparing for them.
Yeah.
And then what are we going to do with all of our fantastic bungalows over at CTE? Are we going to move those out of there? So there's some extra portables. Yeah.
Yeah. We will be taking a couple portables over to the Bellevue building. Then we'll move the others out, most likely down to that Crescent View property where they were in the past.
Okay. Well, that sounds, I'm sure they'll be glad to.
Yeah. It was our goal to move those over. I think we've said it's always Peruvian Park and Glacier Hills are on schedule to be completed, but we really can't move Bellevue out until we get those done. So it's going to be a puzzling.
It's a puzzle
to get everything ready. Well, we do anticipate Diamond Ridge enrollment could grow up to 300 students, but next year we're going to keep it at around that 100-ish that they are right now, just because the constraints we're going to have on the facility next year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We do see that growing a little bit over the next few years.
Great.
We can get those done.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Nybauer.
Thank you. Looks like a good list. I appreciate Dr. Robbins bringing up the water, the standing water on the soccer fields at Corner Canyon. And I believe that water issue also affects lacrosse. And I also, in my high school visits, I know that another concern is football fields and making sure we're maintaining those for the safety. And as I have gone and talked to other high schools, it sounds like that may be something we need to review with our other high schools too, that Corner Canyon may not be the only one that's having issues with just the safety for the athletes on those fields.
On the turf fields?
On football turf. Yeah.
You figure about a 10 to 12 year life.
I know that Corner Canyon already had someone come out and evaluate and
Yeah.
said that they needed to replace. And I think there was another high school that had the same evaluation. So.
Yeah, Hillcrest would go before Corner.
Yeah.
It's a little older. The other three are newer, quite a bit newer.
Right.
Got put in a couple of years ago. So we always do have a contractor, someone on contract to evaluate those.
Mhm.
Or of course monitoring those. Yeah,
Mhm. And some of them probably get a little more foot traffic than others too,
that's true.
and wear and tear.
Yeah.
So that can be something we look into or consider possible. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Wilcox. Lots of good work going, and we appreciate people, all that they do to pay attention to those kind of needs across the district. Next is policy update. I'll read the policy numbers while Mr. Christensen is coming up. Policy 500.40, student health service and requirements. Policy 600.02, curriculum adoption, and policy 600.06, school library media selection and review. Mr. Christensen, Assistant Legal Counsel.
Thank you, President Tingey. I was telling Mr. Wilcox earlier today that there isn't anything better and more breathtaking following an annual comprehensive financial report than an update for the policy committee and the policy update. So it's a pleasure to be with you. I hope you all had wonderful Thanksgiving holiday and those patrons that are here with us. What I'd like to do is walk you through the policy update, and I'm going to separate them quickly and then ask for questions, recognizing that each of the policy items for tonight are for a first reading, and the policy committee welcomes feedback through email and other forms of communication regarding these issues. So the first one that's on our agenda is, as you know, we've been working through the student and instruction section for a number of years as kind of the capstone of working through the entire policy manual. This policy, student health service requirements, just needed some organizational updates, particularly in the appeal process. So when a student has an individual healthcare plan for attending school, this policy addresses those issues, how a patron or a parent or legal guardian can make a request to the district, how that health plan is set up, and then how, if there are concerns, where they would address those with the district. And it outlines some additional definitions. And as I said, the appeal process was updated to work through our student responsive services department. As far as that, we did update, if you see on board docs, some forms and exhibits that will go along with the new policy. And again, this one is for first reading. As far as really substantive updates, they're included on board docs and can be reviewed. I don't have any other updates for this policy. I can respond to questions, I think, when we're all concluded.
Well, how about any questions on this
questions on this
particular
one?
policy? No. Okay. Thank you.
So the curriculum adoption policy. Again, as we're looking at the instruction section, this is one of the policies that was in the last section that we were working through systematically to update. And this was a specific directive of the board recently to look at the curriculum adoption processes. As we have progressed in our time in the district, over time, our instructional supports department periodically brings curriculum adoptions to the board and has had an internal process where they review materials, then bring those forward to the board. What this policy revision does, and brings a lot of that internal work into some new exhibits. So to just outline the structure of the new policy, we've added a broader board policy statement that outlines the development and adoption of instructional materials. And then the exhibits really outline, and the policy, the criteria that will be looked at in the adoption of the policy of the instructional materials. Where you see on the slide where it has definitions, all of these topics are identified in the policy in terms of Utah core standards, district-wide primary curriculum materials, digital and print resources, course level, supplemental, intervention, and teacher selected materials, kind of a hierarchy moving from adoption at the district level clear down into the individual classroom. I'm going to have Amber Broderick-Landert, who's their Director of Instructional Supports, take a few minutes and talk about each of the specific exhibits where there is a criteria that will be used throughout the adoption at each level, and how that has been refined to be included in this policy.
Thank you, Jeff. Good evening, board. So as Jeff mentioned previously, in the revisions to the board philosophical portion of this particular policy, in that particular portion, we identified 12 specific criteria that really have become the foundation of this policy and are then embedded in all of the exhibits in all of the different levels of curriculum materials that are adopted, whether it's a teacher looking at them in his or her classroom, at the school level for supplemental and intervention materials, all the way up through district-wide primary curriculum materials adoption. So Julie, if you don't mind clicking on Exhibit 1. When Jeff mentioned that part of our efforts in revising this policy were to really make sure that what we were practicing was embedded in policy, this specifically is what he was talking about. So a handful of years ago, those of you that were on the board may recall, we brought forth this long step, what is it, 24 step, Steve, something like that, process to be able to be transparent, predictable, and consistent in how we were proposing district-wide curriculum adoptions, so that you could annually expect to see whatever curriculum were up based on standards or based on need, that we'd be looking at the same process. We'd be really taking our time and doing our due diligence to examine all of the curricula that might meet our needs, evaluating that, involving the teachers who it impacts the most in terms of how they're teaching it, and then moving forward through gathering patron feedback. So this process has only been revised minimally by the policy. We've added a couple of things based on our experience over the last 4 years in implementing this particular practice. So we clarified a couple of areas and just, again, tightened some of the language up to make it aligned to the rest of the new revisions within the policy. Nancy, do you want me to go through all of the exhibits and then ask questions, or do we want to address questions at each point?
I think you can go through all of them, and then we'll have questions on this.
Perfect. So let's move on to Exhibit 2. And this is where you'll really start to, again, see that criteria in the philosophy with those 12 components of what we should be looking at when we evaluate any kind of instructional materials start to come into play here as well. So this is the next exhibit that starts to then further define at what level we're adopting and approving different types of materials. So this particular exhibit focuses on course level primary instructional materials. These are different than district-wide adopted materials because they are for a specific course that may or may not be taught at every school. So this particularly applies to a lot of our advanced placement courses, our concurrent courses, concurrent enrollment courses, our IB, our CTE, and other electives that, again, are not necessarily the same at every single high school. And so this allows the schools the opportunity to, based on the standards for that particular course, look at what materials are needed, work with their department, their principal, make a recommendation, and then that final recommendation comes to the instructional supports department. But you'll see embedded in those action steps, again, that 12 criteria all the way throughout. So the next exhibit is the instructional materials selection criteria. And this criteria is, again, what is used in the supplemental and intervention material selection and approval process, as well as the criteria that we will be working with teachers to develop their fluency and automaticity in understanding this criteria, because this is the criteria that we would hope that they'll continue to use as they're selecting materials for their classroom that is beyond what is listed in the instructional guides. So this would be, again, that routine that we want to see them getting into, and many of them, I would say, are already doing this anyway, but it formalizes that process and makes clear, again, those criteria that we expect all of our instructional materials to meet. So those are the 3 new exhibits. Really quickly, though, let's actually pull up Exhibit 4 as well. This one is the fiction and nonfiction book approval process, formerly known as the novel approval process. We've clarified that this process includes fiction and nonfiction, and we've included it in this policy, whereas before it was just a standalone practice in our schools. So those are the main exhibits that have been added. The other 2 were part of the original policy, referenced in the original policy in terms of the standards for video guidelines, as well as the waiver of participation for any of the materials. And that is in connection to the last section of the policy that states that parents have the right to request a waiver for their students' participation, and then all of the criteria around that. Are there any questions?
Questions, I think, Mrs. Arnold.
I don't have this in my board packet, and I just asked Steve if they're in the board docs, and they're not. So I didn't get to see these in the supplementals. So
They're linked in the PDF of the presentation, as well as in the actual policy.
They're linked in there.
Yes, I'm happy to.
You know, those links get you in lots of trouble. I'm just saying. We've been here board meeting after board meeting about links.
I'd be happy to send those to you.
Will you please make it? Yeah, will you please send those to me in an email? Thank you.
Would that help anybody else if I sent the links individually?
Yeah. Anything else, Mrs. Arnold?
No, I'll reread it for a second reading so that I can go through it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wrigley.
Yeah, I would suggest maybe you want to post this on board docs. I know we've been
separately.
Those supplementals, just where they could see them pretty easy. We have gone through 2 or 3 meetings in the last 2 weeks. We're becoming best friends on the policy committee on these things. And I know we have spent, I think that 24 criteria would be very helpful for parents and stuff to take a look at the steps and how long it takes and how, the whole process that we go through. So if that was posted, those 2, and the other one also that we've put out is that one as far as extra curricular activities or whatever for teachers in the classroom when they're trying to. You had
the teacher selected.
Yeah, teacher
materials.
Selected. There's a name for everything here. Teacher selected criteria I think would be very important, because I know there's been some concern expressed as to how teachers decide stuff in the classroom. So there's very specific instructions that we've been put out to this, and that's already been out there for a while, but they've been improved and updated, I guess you would say. And as far as the instructional materials, it was interesting in the 12 criteria. I think we've always sort of had something, as you said, about that, but as we put it down, very apropos, and we talk about representative of diverse cultures, free of bias or stereotypes related to sex, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, and contributes to a balanced perspective. So I think we sort of talk about some of the things that people have been asking for in criteria. So I think that's nice. It's embedded within policy and sort of the foundations of what we're taking a look at. And it does correlate to the documents you suggested. So thank you for now.
Any other questions or comments on this policy? Any feedback for us to consider? Or as Mr. Christensen said, if there is feedback, please reach out to the policy committee. But
yes,
yeah, before we bring it back for second reading. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, the third policy for this evening is the school library media selection and review policy. And so this one is on our agenda to take a look at some of the provisions that are within the policy. As you may recall, in 2020, this policy was brought before the board as we were working through the instructional section. And at that time, we added some definitions to the policy and looked at particularly the challenge process, as well as added some criteria for acquisition. At that time, when the policy was adopted, we included a discussion of weeding, but some of that criteria did not make it into the full policy as it was adopted. In reviewing this policy, the policy committee saw some limitations and weaknesses in our existing policy, and this new draft incorporates some of that feedback from the policy committee. Let me just again give you an overview of the elements of the new policy that is listed on board docs for review. The first is there's a broad policy statement to differentiate between what we just were talking about in terms of instructional materials that will be adopted and library materials, which, though approved through a separate process, isn't an instructional material which goes out to all students. In terms of the library selection media review policy, those materials are defined in the new policy as one of the new definitions that it means books, pamphlets, magazines, audiovisual materials, software, electronic materials, subscriptions, or other information that is accessible to students, but it's on a self-selection and voluntary basis. So these aren't required materials for students, but are both through selection and on a voluntary basis. So that's part of the philosophical statement in the board policy. Then the next discussion in the new policy addresses acquisitions, and the criteria for acquisitions coming into the school library has been revised to include some broad, some new criteria, and then also that all material that is adopted for the school library begins with being based on age appropriateness for the emotional development, ability level, and learning styles for the students, and then some additional criteria. The next element in the policy that was absent from our previous is a review process. And our discussions in the adoption of the previous policy is much of the internal review would occur within district staff and working with patrons. And our previous policy had a challenge process. What we're doing in the new policy is making that school level review and district review of materials more explicit, where both a patron, in terms of a parent and legal guardian, can initiate a school review, or district staffs, a member of the board, or the superintendent could initiate an internal review, which is separate and distinct from a challenge process. This is a review of the acquisition, which allows our librarians to review and take a look at a title selection, and through that process, review the criteria for which books were selected.
So I'm sorry, just for a moment. So we're talking before the purchase is made, or we're talking about books that are already on the wall? Which one are we talking about?
So as I was speaking, I was talking about acquisition would be the criteria prior to purchase.
Okay, I'm just wanting to clarify that.
Right.
Because somebody might not know what acquisition means.
So that's the criteria that they review. And then the review process would be after purchase. That's on the shelf, someone sees it, and then they can initiate a review.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify those two terms.
Thank you, Board Member Arnold. Then after the district and level review processes, which could ultimately, if it's reviewed and for a review of that criteria, if it did not meet criteria, then it could be moved to our deselection and weeding process, which our librarians will then work through that process as outlined based on formal criteria to determine whether or not a book should be deselected and weeded. And then finally in the process, there is what we had previously, which is our challenge process. The attached red line is on board docs with the intent of including some forms that will facilitate both the review process as well as the appeal process. I can respond to questions regarding this policy. It again is for first reading, and we are as members of the policy committee willing to consider feedback regarding these issues.
Okay, board questions and feedback.
I just have one. If we have a challenge to a book on the shelf, does the book stay on the shelf until the challenge goes through? And how long does it take the challenge to go through to decide if the book stays on the shelf or goes off the shelf?
Currently, as the policy is drafted, as was maintained in our previous version, during a challenge, the material in question remains in use during the challenge process at the school level. However, at the district level, that school committee engaging in the challenge process could make a determination to remove it during that time period at a district level challenge. The time frame would be a matter of allowing the committee to come together, do the appropriate review, and then make a determination. We did not specify a time period in the policy, but as a lot of our other policies indicate, it would be within a reasonable time frame. That could be added if we felt it needed to have a time frame built into the review process or the challenge process.
Additional thoughts, Mr. Wrigley?
Yeah, I appreciate that. We've done quite a bit of work on this over the last couple of weeks. And one of the questions I had a patron ask me is, if they're a patron of the district but don't have a student, and they want to review the books in our libraries. For I understand right now, you can go into each library website and each website for each school and check that. But is there a process that we'll be developing through communications or someplace that will allow patrons to find out? I mean, for example, what the last 4 years worth of books you bought or whatever. What's the process for that? I know we've had that sort of mentioned in here, but it's not too clear.
So I guess, Mr. Riley, or board member Riley, the first element in the new policy would be, I'll answer it this way. There'll be a list of new acquisitions. So each year, library media specialists or teacher librarians will be in the process of acquiring new acquisitions. That the intent is for that list of new acquisitions to be available upon request for a patron. In terms of reviewing other elements as far as what's within the library, the policy is designed to allow that kind of to work through the individual student and parent. If they have an issue with the title selection, they could come in as a parent and review the online catalog from a website. And we had discussions on where the status of that was. I can't recall is that available now? I believe that it's available now where you can check the online, at least the library in the secondary. So that'll be available and we're working towards that.
But if I have a patron just wants to know all the books that came in the last 4 years, what's that process? A grandma request, I guess, which anybody could make. Yeah, I know as far as acquisitions, we have about 440,000 books in our libraries. What I understand, we get in about 7,000, almost 8,000 books per year. And talking with librarians, I guess, when we talk about acquisition, I think they're trying to monitor books coming in. We now have new criteria to raise that against. But I suspect no matter how good you have with 7,000 to 8,000 books coming in per year, there may be one that sneak through. That we will rely upon our staff and our parents and other people to inform us to use this particular process.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wrigley. Yeah, we've had in reviewing this policy, we've had support from our district library media specialist who provide me some of those same figures where the number of print books in our 13 secondary schools is over 168,000 titles, and in our 29 elementaries, 302,000. So in their review, and we work with outside vendors that provide those titles, there are occasions where you may have a review that may not be complete. And so as the librarians work through the acquisitions, they're letting us know that the best way to become informed about a book is to read it. And we think we have developed through our discussions a policy process that allows us to winnow down in terms of criteria, and then a robust review process to address issues.
So do we have a process in this that allows parents, if they don't want their child to read a book that's approved for everybody, but they don't want to read it, is there a way we could tag their library card, or the parent can tag their library card to make sure that that child doesn't check out that book?
So there'd be, I guess, two answers to that question. One, if there is an issue that a child, and that would be through our curriculum adoption policy, where we talked about there's the waiver. If they don't participate in a particular activity or curriculum, they can
this would
choose to
this
do
would
a
be just a library book that the parent doesn't want the child to read. Is there a process we may have on that?
Yeah, I think we can. That is built into the
to inform the librarian and do the card. The current books that we pulled, I understand there's only about 6 of them, 6 copies of them, and they put them into review. And don't you have to read them to review them?
That's my
So, I mean, that's one of the reasons they're off the shelf right now, because they're being reviewed to read.
I thought
know
they
there was
weren't
some concern.
pulled off the shelves yet, that they were still on the shelves as we reviewed.
Are they? I don't know.
And I can only speak to the policy review process. In terms of what the policy committee has done. If Dr. Robbins, if you can
want me to comment to that,
question.
Clarine? So there were 9 initial titles that the physical copy was pulled. I don't know on the county side as far as access to the digital version, but they were put on hold until we reviewed this policy. So to that point, one recommendation is, we know there's been a lot of conversation and input on this very issue. I feel confident after looking at the policy. This was a real concern that I had. I mean, when you look at the initial policy around acquisition, weeding, and review from the beginning, and really at the heart of this issue, my recommendation would be is that once this is complete, that those titles would then fall under this process. So.
Okay. For what I understand, that the school libraries fall under different criteria than the public libraries as far as what we have in them. Is that correct?
So I can only
On the
speak to
federal level.
As far as, well, they're
Yeah.
the school library, which bears the imprimatur of the school. So we operate separately and distinct from a public library. Yes.
But I mean, what I'm trying to say is, and we've embedded it within our policy, that we actually have tougher criteria, or more stringent criteria in a school library than we do in a public library, in that we cannot discriminate against content. I think there was a federal Supreme Court ruling on content, but it gets into the other sexually explicit and stuff like that. That may not be appropriate from K through 12. That would be, because I've had parents concerned that we'll pull things just because of content. And under our policy, we can't pull a content, but it would be other things within this policy that we can pull that on.
So
or
yes, Mr.
weed
Wrigley,
them out, I
the
guess you'd
Supreme
say.
Court case, Island Tree v. Pico, discusses that you can't remove books from the library based on content, and they discuss that pervasive vulgarity is the standard. And so as we move forward, we've added that criteria into our policy, that we have an acquisition criteria as well as a deselection and weeding criteria.
Yeah, so I think that's what I'm concerned about, and I think we've addressed in this policy, is for parents that want us to keep books in, and parents that are concerned about books that they wanted weeded out. There's a policy to sort of guard against both sides in the current policy as we move forward. Is that correct? I think.
Yeah, that would be
thank you.
the feedback from the committee.
Okay, Mrs. Schill.
So I just want to, first of all, thank all the parents and also media specialists that have emailed us. We have received a lot of emails on this topic, and we do read them all. And I just want to say thank you for those. Also, I want to thank the policy committee, because they have spent a lot of time on this policy. And I think, I mean, there may be some tweaks to it, but I think overall it's really good. So just want to thank them for all their work.
Thank you. Mrs. Oakes?
Hi. So I again also want to reiterate what Amber had to say. I appreciate so many of the perspectives that have come in on this. This has been a really difficult issue. And this is absolutely a heavy lift for the policy committee. And I can't imagine how long and how difficult some of your meetings have been. I have a constituent who has a sibling who is a media specialist for a large school district in Southern California. And it's been a number of years now, they've had to develop policies like this in order to address a lot of the things that were coming into the schools. She actually called her sister up in a mad panic once because they had received a large shipment of Pokemon books from Japan, only to find out that a parent had opened one of these graphic novels and that there were really inappropriate pictures in there. And so they had to go through that process at that time, call the books, go through things. I think so much of what we've dealt with and why this has been frustrating for people is that it hasn't been until now that we've really had to evolve into a process where we've really needed something like this, where there's more of a formal screening opportunity for parents who have concerns or content in books, particularly in graphic novels, which are becoming increasingly popular with youth, that can become really problematic. So I want to thank the policy committee. I think that this is on the right path. I think this is definitely the direction we need to go, and I appreciate everyone who has written into us.
Thank you. Other comments or questions, or board, any feedback?
President Tingy,
Yes.
I would just like to thank Gretchen, I'm going to try your last name, Zaitsev, from our district library media specialist, as well as Dr. Landward. They were both instrumental in making some proposed revisions, and I appreciate their work, and also the time of the policy committee.
Thank you. And I just, as one that serves on the policy committee, I too want to reiterate the appreciation for all of the staff in the district that have been working very hard on this. I feel like what we've come up with, it honors and preserves the role of the librarian in our schools, but it also has a way to engage parents or district personnel in this process, so that combined, it can be something that as a community, we work together on these kind of things. And so I appreciate the time and the effort that's gone into this. And again, just remind the board, this is for a first reading, and we will bring it back in 2 weeks for a second reading. So
thank you, President Tingy.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the items on our study session agenda. I would, I hope that those that have joined us in person or here at the meeting will allow me to. I'd like to give the board just a few minute break. We've been working for a while, and if we'll just take a short, maybe 5-minute break, and then we'll reconvene. Thank you.
You are now muted.
like to welcome you all to the meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Today is November 30th, 2021, and we are meeting at the district office located at 9361 South 300 East in Sandy, Utah. And I would like to excuse Mrs. Holly Neibauer for this business meeting portion. And the also recognize that Mont Millerberg and Amanda Oakes are joining us by telephone. And so with that, the first item on the agenda and is to approve the agenda for this evening, November 30th, 2021. I will actually, first of all, I'm just going to confirm that we have Mr. Millerberg and Mrs. Oakes on the line.
I'll confirm I'm here.
We're glad to hear you. Thank you. Mrs. Oakes? Maybe she's muted and doesn't realize it. Amanda, can you hear us? Okay. Okay, I'm sure she'll be with us shortly, but we will go ahead and proceed, and I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda for tonight, November 30th, 2021.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda for the November 30th, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion to the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you. Next, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by East Sandy Elementary Principal Brian Rudds.
You guys are quick. I was already had. Please stand, but everyone's already doing it. So please begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may now be seated. Thanks.
Thank you. And we'll look forward to hearing some school highlights. Thank
Absolutely. Well, thank you first off for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight to talk about East Sandy Elementary, home of the Mustangs. East Sandy community, including the faculty, staff, students, and families, makes this one of the most welcoming and inviting places I have ever been. Each day, the students arrive elated to be at school with smiles on their faces. The teachers greet the students with overwhelming enthusiasm and start their day off right. You can tell that each teacher truly wants to be here and is ready to make a difference in every child's life. East Sandy has a population of about 380 students and is proud to house 2 of our district's ABS classes. Just the other day, I watched as one of our students entered their mainstream class and was greeted by an uproar of excitement from teachers and students. The acceptance and kindness of these students shows us overwhelming, heartwarming feelings for every student. The community is also always willing to pitch in and help out when needed. East Sandy PTA and SCC are involved in contributing members to the school and put forth an effort, just like their students, to make sure that East Sandy is the place to be. For example, just this year, our PTA pivoted to an outdoor book fair showcase so that families could check out what was going to be offered at our parent-teacher conferences and to sell a few books. And of course they did. It was unbelievable. We also focus on literacy through our close reading, professional development, and letters training to make sure that our students show growth in their reading goals throughout the year. Although letters has been a tough addition during this year, all of my teachers have liked the training and very much appreciated the support of the board and the school district. It is amazing that I have the opportunity to work with people who are so resilient and push through hard times to make sure that they have a positive attitude every day when they come to work. Once again, thank you for the opportunity. And remember, go Mustangs. Thank you.
Thank you. And Principal, will you please extend our appreciation and gratitude to your staff and to the students there for all the wonderful work that they're doing this year. Thank you. Okay, next we will turn time over to Jeff Haney and Kirsten Stewart from the Communications Department for some recognitions.
President T, thank you for this time to recognize the achievements of students, faculty, and staff in Canyon School District. Tonight, for our recognitions, we are honoring stars on the football field and the classroom. Those who are honored tonight will receive a letter of commendation from the board and the superintendent. We appreciate all that they have done to work with us to build a district of distinction. Now, our first honoree tonight is Corner Canyon High football player Devon Brown. Now, Devon continues to impressively follow in his predecessor's footsteps, like Jackson Dart, who is now playing for USC. Devon, who is committed to USC, made a huge impact on the football field for the Chargers in his senior season, which ended at the championship game at the University of Utah's Rice-Eccles Stadium. Now, thanks to his big plays throughout the entire season, he was named as the 2021 Max Prep Utah High School Football Player of the Year. Now, he's now qualified to be considered for the Max Preps All-American team, which will be announced in early January. So congratulations to Devon, and we wish him much luck as he is considered for further honors for his football season. Our next honoree is somebody who has been to board meetings several times and is helping us in our strategic planning process, and that is Eastmont Middle School teacher Emma Moss. Now, it's no secret that we think that Miss Moss is a rock star teacher. She was our Teacher of the Year in 2020, and she was a runner-up to the Utah Teacher of the Year in that same year. And now she has been selected to represent Canyon School District and her school, Eastmont Middle, as a Utah Teacher Fellow. Now, the fellows receive training on developing and leading professional learning, engaging their peers, professional uses of social media, and how to look at challenges with a solution-oriented mindset. Now, throughout the year, Mrs. Moss will engage with many education stakeholders, meet with lawmakers, and participate on state education committees. So congratulations, Emma, for bringing even more distinction to Eastmont and Canyon School District. And our next honoree is an MVE, or the Most Valuable Educator, as chosen by the Utah Jazz and Instructor. Now, this is her first year of being a full-time teacher, and that's Ara Nielsen. She from Mve Elementary School, and she's truly impacting the lives of her third grade dual language immersion students. Now, thanks to her efforts, the Utah Jazz and Instructor, they created Canvas. They honored Senora Nilsson as the MVE. The Mve Award is being given as part of a program that celebrates teachers who make a difference in their students' lives. The recognition came with a $1,000 classroom grant, 6 tickets to Instructor Suite at the Jazz game on November 27th, recognition during that game, and a personalized Jazz jersey. And much to the delight of the students at Midvale, you can see here that they had a visit from the Jazz Bear. That's when they announced Ara Nilsson's selection as the Most Valuable Educator and the receipt of all of those prizes. Now, as a reminder, we have a very special event coming up pretty soon. Educators from Canyon School District, Cleve Castleton and Milo Mon, will take their trip to infinity and beyond next week. They are part of the NASA-affiliated institute to attend a prestigious astrophysics teacher training program, and that includes a flight on Sophia, which is the world's largest flying observatory. They're scheduled to take this trip to California December 5th to the December 10th. We're excited for them and are interested in how they spend their time and the adventures that they have as NASA Airborne Astronomy Ambassadors. So congratulations to Cleve and Milo. We wish them much luck and can't wait to hear about their journey. Now, one more thing that I would like to mention: in 2017, our community rallied to support a bond proposal to improve schools all across Canyons District. Now, as part of those projects, excuse me, new theaters and auditoriums were built at Hillcrest and Brighton High Schools. And those schools will be producing musicals in their new theaters this week. The grand opening of Hillcrest Performing Arts Center will feature a new Broadway musical adaptation of Holiday Inn. And that's the classic 1942 film that features the song White Christmas, especially for the holidays. Now, it's the first time that this show has been produced by a Utah high school. And if you don't have your tickets, we encourage you to snap those up quick, because Hillcrest productions tend to sell out and in a hurry. And then, of course, we have Brighton's talented students and staff. They are putting on a classic hit, Disney's Beauty and the Beast. And that is sure to be entertaining, and especially in the new auditorium that we built for the performing arts. And if you haven't gone to a Canyons District High School musical production, we encourage you to do so. This year, I was able to take in Newsies at Corner Canyon and SpongeBob at Alta High School, and I have tickets to Holiday Inn on Thursday. The shows are great fun, and the talent on the stages is just impressive. Now, arts education is incredibly valued in Canyon School District, and for proof of that, you just need to look at the hundreds of students who are on the stage and in the orchestra pits to entertain the audiences that come to see them. Our high schools play to packed houses, so like I said, get your tickets soon. So President Tingy, thank you for this time that you give us to honor those in Canyon School District who help us make a world-class district. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. We really enjoy and appreciate hearing about all these remarkable achievements and celebrating with the individuals and the schools. So thank you for doing that for us. Okay, we have now come to the patron comment portion of our meeting. While not required by law, the board often designates time and meetings to listen to the patrons of the district. Please be aware that patron comment time is limited to residents and taxpayers of Canyons District, students and parents of students, and current employees of the district. Patrons may provide board members with written documents. These documents must be submitted to the board secretary over here, Cindy, raise your hand, at the meeting, or email to the Office of Public Communications at communications@canyonsdistrict.org by noon of the day following the board meeting. Time allotted for public comment is at the discretion of the board president. Tonight, the board has allotted 45 minutes for public comment. Based on the number of individuals that have signed up, individuals will be given 3 minutes, and those representing groups will be given 4 minutes. Comments made during patron comment time are part of the public record. It is the board's practice to listen and take notes during patron comments. The Board of Education does not discuss matters that are not on the meeting's agenda, nor engage in public comment on individual students to protect their privacy or employee issues. If a patron wants to comment on a district employee's character, professional competence, or mental or physical health, the board requests that those comments be submitted in writing. However, if the patron determines to verbally comment on those personnel issues, the comments need to be civil and refrain from personal attacks, insults, defamatory, or slanderous comments about an individual. The Board of Education would like to make it clear that critical race theory is not part of the curriculum being used in Canyon School District. There are no plans to incorporate it into the curriculum or instruction in Canyon schools. The Board of Education values input on all sides of issues. To maintain decorum and respect, we ask that those in attendance refrain from applause or other types of demonstrations during the patron comment time, as well as throughout the meeting. So with that, I will call out the names of those that have signed up, and I will start out by apologizing if I mispronounce a name and ask you that if I do mispronounce, if you'll please correct it when you get up to the microphone. And so we'll begin with Steve Deem, and then Sydney Schaff, and then Katie Wilkinson.
Hi, my name is Steve Deem. I'd like to first thank everybody here for your service, as well as the teachers, especially the educators at East Sandy Elementary. I've got two Mustangs and very, very happy with our school. I'm here today to talk about remote school. I can't tell you how extraordinarily unhappy I am that we're taking Fridays off at this point once a month. I don't think that, and obviously it's a difficult time for everybody, but the families that are at risk, it is extraordinarily difficult to educate their kids at home. Almost all studies indicate the remote learning is a massive failure. At-risk kids are 4 times as likely to suffer than prior grades. Even students that are not at risk also suffer. The first Friday that we had, my junior high, or you guys do middle school here, came home with 8 hours of homework to do over that weekend. That is completely unacceptable. Both my wife and I, we both work jobs, 60 plus hours. We cannot be educators. We're not educators. We're not trained as educators. This is not something that we can pick up in our spare time. So I can implore you, this is something that it's a slippery slope. Right now, we're going to do, what is it, 7 Fridays? Now, March of this next year, it'll be, hey, let's just do every other Friday. And it's just, it just can't happen. So I implore this district to put an end to remote learning and Fridays off. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sydney Schaff.
You're so close.
Will you please say it correctly for me?
Love to. Shof.
Shof.
Yeah. Of the 7 letters, 3 of them are silent. It makes for fun. Members of the board. Sorry, can you hear me? I'm really short. I feel like I have to jump to the mic. Okay. My name is Sydney Shof. I have a PhD in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis in literacy, education, and leadership, and I teach within Canyons District. The notion of amending the book review policy seems innocuous. It appeases the massive emails from a loud minority of parents who quote out of context from the books that they're demanding be pulled from libraries without simply giving in to their demands. Harmless, right? Changing the policy to make it easier to reevaluate if a book should be on a school shelf seems like nothing. But it's actually a rather dangerous slippery slope to the banning of books that historically disenfranchise minorities and railroad over everything that doesn't fall in line with the homogenous culture of the societal majority. It has happened throughout history over and over again. Students of color and LGBTQ youth start struggling to find themselves within the pages of the books that they read. In the last 15 years, the majority of the books challenged or banned were done so for exploring the issues that teens want and need to feel like they are not alone in tackling. Race, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, mental illness, disability. These critical conversations around current social issues and identity make for a more inclusive and understanding community, especially when it supports an individual in getting through their own personal challenges. We cannot allow anyone to subvert the interests and needs of our community's children for the sake of the children. We cannot allow policies that will marginalize the lives and experiences of the children we're fighting to protect. Finally, the book review policy and any amendments made to it are unlawful in and of itself, because as dictated by the US Supreme Court, in examining a case from 1982, the Supreme Court stated that the banning of books based on content violates the First Amendment's freedom of speech protections. Quote, although school boards have a vested interest in promoting respect for social, moral, and political community values, their discretionary power is secondary to the transcendent imperatives of the First Amendment. The Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, held that as centers for a voluntary inquiry and a dissemination of information and ideas, school libraries enjoy a special affinity with the rights of free speech and press. Therefore, no person may restrict the availability of books in its libraries simply because they disagree with what is within its pages. The examination into whether this policy should be amended is wholly irrelevant, as no group or individual can ban a book from a school library based on content, rendering the amendment to the current policy and the policy as it stands a violation to the First Amendment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Katie Wilkinson, and then Laurel Harris, and then Connie Slaughter.
My name is Katie Wilkinson, and I'm a mother of a freshman attending high school in Canyon School District. I'm also a 9th grade English teacher within the district. Unit 1 of the 9th grade language arts curriculum is entitled The Human Experience. Through this unit and school year, we as a district explore what it means to be human and what unites us universally. In this unit, we help our students see literature as both a window and a mirror, not just into their lives, but the lives of others. Through literature, we are able to view others' cultures and people we may not know. We have a window into their lives. We also use literature as a mirror. We can read and learn about ourselves, who we are, and who we want to become. I urge my students and my own son to read widely, get a sense of the world and what ties us all together as humans. There is not just one story of humanity, but a rich mosaic of culture, gender, race, and education. This is one of the most valuable lessons we teach our children. We may be different, but we're all the same. We have more in common than we think. Literature helps us see this. During our summer professional development, we as language arts teachers were encouraged by the district to be more inclusive with our literature choices and recommendations to our library. I'm going to repeat that. We were encouraged by the district to be more inclusive with our literature and choices in the library. The library and its vast array of books provide a window and a mirror to our students. I have many struggling readers in my classes. Mostly they struggle with motivation. They don't want to read because they don't or can't see the characters or can't see themselves, within the characters or plot. One of the things I love most about our school library and our librarian is we have so much diversity. Students can find themselves or representations of themselves in our school, in our library. This helps create a school culture of acceptance and inclusion. Everyone is welcome, everyone is accepted, everyone is important. By allowing anyone, anywhere to challenge, restrict, or ban literature for any reason could be a disaster for our community. In the end, this is telling our more marginalized and ignored groups of students they don't matter. And in some cases, as in the LGBTQ population, this can lead to increased feelings of depression and suicide. When students cannot see themselves in their literature, they will not read. They will not connect with the world outside. They will struggle having empathy for others. As a teacher and a parent, I want children and young adults to see themselves in their world in our public school library. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Laurel Harris, Connie Slaughter, Alex Brown.
I'm here to speak as a retired librarian as how we go about selecting books. When building a book order, a professional teacher librarian will read hundreds of reviews and use the following criteria. We look at national and state awards, student and teacher requests, series completions, word of mouth, bestseller lists, school interests, etc. Attempts are made to meet the needs and the diverse interests of all of the students. Since schools are not required to read a book for the library and can read it if they don't like it, they can put it back. Different books that are different books than are found in the classroom. We can get very diverse books. On a rare occasion, I would get a book that I felt did not fit with our community or our high school population, and I would not place it on the shelf. This would be after I got the book, usually for reasons that it was too adult or that the quality was not appropriate. Occasionally, a teacher would bring a book to my attention that I had missed, and I would consider maybe removing it for those reasons. We do not know this until we get the book. We do not read every book that goes on our shelf. When I was at Jordan High School, I had 26,000 books on my shelf. Very rarely did I get a chance to read the majority of them. During the 25 years as a librarian, there were 2 titles that parents brought to me to complain about that they were uncomfortable with. After going through the policy we had at the time, they eventually became comfortable with leaving the books on the shelf. I was retiring when they began putting together a policy to look at for parents to deal with books when they objected to them. I don't think that there is a librarian working in this district that feels that every book on the shelf right now would be appropriate. They feel that we need to be able to deal with the books if that there is a problem. And I had parents that would call me at times and say they are uncomfortable with the book, and we could talk about it. And we would occasionally deal with their individual student. They never felt like they needed to have the book removed for everyone, but they wanted it removed for their child, and we were able to work through it. I can't tell you how sad and how heartbroken it would be when I had a student who was LGBT who came up and apologized for me buying a book that he was unable to finish reading because he felt like I had wasted funds buying a book for him because he didn't think he was worth having a book purchased for him. It is very important that we buy books for every student in our library, and that the student feels like those books are books that they are available for them and they can find books there for them.
Thank you. Connie Slaughter, Alex Brown, Alicia Ruiz.
I'm grateful that I have a little more time than I thought, because I was really going to have to burn through this. And I did want to thank the board for all the time and effort, and our superintendent for the care you take with listening and hearing us. First of all, I wasn't going to say, this is something I just feel like I should say. I think we've come to a very milestone in our country and with individuals. We definitely have very different camps in way we think. Some people feel that our libraries should choose what our children should learn. As parents that I'm involved with, and as a grandparent, I want my kids to have great literature. And I'm going to go ahead and go on with what I have planned for tonight. In May, I became aware of critical race theory. A group of concerned friends of mine gathered and we discussed CRT. We began attending school board meetings. In August, we became aware of social emotional learning. Second step, we honored moms as they spent hours vetting second step. In August, I attended a focus group with Education Elements, whom Canyon's hired to help vision the next 10 years. I spoke at the board meeting about the character and ideals of Education Elements a few months ago. Not good. At the end of September, a group of parents and grandparents, I began a reading club, approved Canyon's novel list. We and other parent groups nationwide have discovered books in our schools and libraries that are sexually explicit, filthy language, violence, etc., etc. I have personally read 20 of the Canyon's approved novel list, and I've reviewed at least 60 books in our local school libraries. Most of these cannot be challenged, but honestly, where is good, wholesome literature? I think I found 3 that I really loved and laughed at. it's no wonder our kids are struggling. They're also dark and deep, depressing, and I think adding more to the problems that our kids are having. I started wondering when our school and libraries allowed these books in, and here's what I found, and I quote, "Future Ready Schools began in the White House in 2014 with a room full of national leaders to take a future ready pledge, a commitment to lead innovations in their educational system." Is this the current situation of our schools, the product of future ready schools? The following quote is from the American Library Association. Future Ready Librarians Framework began in 2016 and has thrived in both librarian communities and beyond. For many librarians, it has offered an opportunity to reimagine and rebrand their practice in new ways. Are the current book selection in our libraries the reflection of this centralized rebranding and reimagining? Critical race theory, second step, education elements, future ready schools, librarians, and some teachers that continue to push divisive and destructive ideologies and personal agendas. What else are we not aware of? As patrons, we are late to the game. I guess some patrons, we seem to be divided, but we are here now. Many parents and grandparents, all taxpayers, want our kids to get an education, not indoctrination. If my kids were in school at this time, I'm nervous about what's going on. I want my kids to have, my grandkids live right next door to me. I see them every day. Ask them about school. I want them to have a great education. I want them to go to school and not be wondering if they're learning something that I don't want them to learn. And I know my daughter-in-law feels the same. So I really am nervous, and I feel like as parents, we should have a say of what's in our libraries. And maybe if our libraries don't change, we just go elsewhere to find the books we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex Brown, Alicia Ruiz, and Maren Mon.
Thank you, board members, for letting me speak today. I'd like to first start off with something that my father has said to me many years. Everything in life is an example, whether that be of something you should be following or something you shouldn't do. These books that are being promoted or even being banned in these libraries are things that should all stay on the shelves for now. The ones that have been mentioned before in the list all talk about different areas of our society that may not be applicable to everyone or may not be liked by everyone. This can be anything from pedophilia, discrimination and racism, and rape. All of these things are things that, regardless of how much it makes us feel bad in the stomach, we should still learn about. People are doing these things today, and the only way to stop it is to talk about it. If we ignore every case of any of this that happens, if we ignore every part of this, every person influenced by this, and every victim of these crimes, these are areas in which we'll continue to thrive in our society and nothing will change. These books portray these in a negative light, something that allows the people to see and allows our students, people like me, to understand that this is something that impacts people in tremendously different ways, in horrible ways. If we don't have diverse stories and characters, we're doing young people a tremendous disservice. We're not preparing them for the real world. The real world isn't a perfect utopia, and this is something that we have to learn growing up. Before we're sent off to college and being independent, before we're worried about these things that could happen to us, we need to make sure that we feel like we're not alone in this society. These books achieve it for us, whether it be LGBTQ plus people, whether it be people of the minority. It allows us to connect with others, to feel their stories, and to know that we can speak out for this. We're not alone. One of these stories that has recently been talked about in the banned books is simply a biography of 6 children's experiences as being trans or gender neutral. These is not something that is promoting it anywhere. It is telling their story and saying, if you are like us, we're here and we can talk about it. Most important part of these books is to prepare us for the future, and our educational experience is to prepare us to live in a society as a global citizen. The more diversity, understanding, and topics that we talk about in a library and in the classroom, the better we're going to have, and the better we can create empathy and foster sympathy for other people of our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Ruiz, Maren Mon, and then Marianne Bates.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. I'm actually on the Canyon Student Council, and I know all of you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to speak on the book ban too.
If you could speak into the mic. Thank you.
Representation can be life-changing. I was born and raised in Texas. I didn't know I was a minority. I didn't truly understand what it meant to be brown in the US. But that shifted when I moved to Utah. I thought to myself, you are the different one. But you told me I was wrong. You told me I was the different one. And I read, and one of the few comforts that I found were reading stories that had Mexican American women and girls who struggled the same struggles as me. And I would read these stories and I would think, this is something that is important to me. It brought out emotions and healing and feelings in me that I wasn't even capable of having at some place like Texas, in a small town where I wasn't even sure about myself. Diverse literature is not only important to give comfort to those who relate to it, but it is also educational to those who need to view a different perspective. As Linda Sue Park says, if we don't have diverse stories and characters, we are doing young people a tremendous disservice, and we aren't preparing them for the real world. So when I saw stories like Lawn Boy and Out of Darkness and even Monday's Not Coming on the ban list, I felt as though my life experience didn't matter. I felt as though your true goal as to remove these stories of real lives is bad just because it makes you uncomfortable. And to be honest, if you're uncomfortable with anti-racism in the lives of minorities, then you are the problem. These books are made for people who are late for them and for those who learn. If you remove these books, you not only limit the growth of young minds, but you take away from students who could heal and grow from these stories. You strip away a possibility of connection, inspiration, and comfort. These books address a specific audience. So if your student is not interested in them, then you mustn't worry about them reading them. These books are not required to be read, but they can be life-changing to those who do read them. And one of the things I did want to bring up is some of the stories that are required to be read in our English classes, like Romeo and Juliet and Animal Farm. What am I really supposed to connect to that? I feel like that we should bring out more books of diversity so that other students can make that connection and have the inspiration to read more like I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Maren Mon, Marianne Bates, and Ireland Oviatt.
Oh my gosh, sorry. From when we walked into kindergarten at age 5 to filling out weekly trackers and sitting on the reading rug, we've been instilled with a deep understanding of the importance of reading. Reading was always supposed to be for everyone. I remember going to the school library as a kid, picking out my favorites and filling at home among their pages. But we aren't here today because we think reading matters more than the joy it bestows among students. We're here to talk about the hypocrisy of the conflict at hand. Those who see more value in the pages of authors that look like them, more value in the education, the cultural and the social enrichment for the children that look like them. According to the American Library Association, in 2019, 8 out of the 10 most banned books contain storylines centered among LGBTQ+ issues. Books on the ALA's list in 2020, such as The Hate You Give, Speak, and Of Mice and Men, were found to contain biases against men and anti-police sentiments. When you look at what they're trying to pull from library shelves, the truth becomes glaringly obvious. They're trying to eradicate what they don't want to read, and thus what they don't want other people reading. If this policy amendment is passed by a board, then how are we to turn a blind eye to every form of sexual content in literature? What about biblical depictions of date rape, adultery, and genital mutilation? Who are we to turn literature to a two-dimensional, black and white, out of context portrayal that diminishes and destroys its themes? I invite you to ask yourselves, as the perpetrators of a bookman, discredit of ideas and extensions of identity, what constitutes wholesome literature as you swear on disgraceful pages in support of this hypocrisy. By upholding their agenda, you discredit and invalidate the stories, the plot lines, the characters, and the meaning behind all of the identities that are empowered in this representation. My friends see themselves in these books. Our national heroes are in these books. They're an explanation of the human experience itself, a holistic view of it, and not just the cherry-picked parts from these parents' favorite aisles. For the sake of protecting students' love of reading, their ability to find a home within these books, just like we all have before, the policy amendment should be regarded as more dangerous than anything within these books. Thank you.
Thank you. Marianne Bates, Ireland Oviatt, and then Jackson Baker.
I'm Marianne Bates, a retired school librarian. And I want to just give you a librarian's point of view. School librarians are certified teachers with an endorsement or master's degree in school library administration. Part of their training is book selection, which includes learning about selection tools, critical sources, so that they can provide books that are inclusive, diverse, and support differing perspectives. In addition, they learn to provide resources for students who have diverse intellectual abilities, learning styles, and physical limitations. Part of the library core curriculum is reading engagement, which emphasizes providing a diverse collection that serves all the students. Librarians and others talk about books providing mirrors and windows. Fiction and nonfiction books that treat difficult topics can help students develop empathy and understanding of those who have different cultural, religious, ethnic, or gender identities than they have. For students who may feel marginalized or in tough situations, a book character who has similar issues can help them find strategies to use in their own lives or give them assurance that they are not alone. Teacher librarians have many tasks. They don't have time to read every book. And like everyone else, librarians sometimes make mistakes when they're selecting material. Districts have reconsideration policies as guidelines for potential issues in a library. Sometimes librarians are accused of being liberal by selecting a wide range of diverse groups. Librarians are not against deselection. Mistakes are sometimes made, but librarians do believe that leaving the books on the shelves until a determination is made is an important part of the process. The First Amendment of the Constitution guarantees freedom of speech, and this amendment protects everyone. Books as diverse as the Bible, Sylvester and the Magic Pebble, Goodnight Moon, and Charlotte's Web, as well as the books currently being reviewed by the district, have been banned in schools across the U.S. Reconsideration policies help school districts have guidelines that protect the differing perspectives found in libraries and in literature. I applaud the district for strengthening the selection and reconsideration policy and hope that in the future books can remain on the shelves if review is needed. I know many of the secondary librarians in Canyons District, and I am amazed by their dedication to the students and teachers in their schools. I know they try to meet the needs of all of the students by providing a diverse and inclusive collection in the school library, hoping to change students' lives and help them achieve academic success. That's why they do what they do.
Thank you. Ireland Oviatt, and then Jackson Baker.
You were super close. It's Ireland Oviatt.
Thank you.
Yes, for sure. So I am a senior at one of your schools at Canyon School District. I have been a student here since elementary school. During my time at these schools, I have never felt that any of the LGBTQ books or the sexual in nature books have been pushed down my throat. It actually wasn't until the pandemic hit when I realized that our media center actually included a wide variety of these books that included voices from LGBTQ writers, person of color writers. Even then, I was never explicitly asked to read any of said books, nor was I recommended them by any admin or teachers at my high school. These books, 9 times out of 10, are not even advertised. When they, Why then should we take away the student's opportunity to, on their own volition, find a book that suits them best? I personally have ran across one of the books that is on the ban list. I have checked it out and I've read it myself. I can see why these parents are upset about the content of these books, but it's not something that we should take away from the students. These books hold stories about victims. These books hold stories about people that they don't get to see every single day. By taking away those stories, you take away the idea that they can be that victim and that they have the right to be that victim and to reach out and to seek out the help and the advice and the guidance that they need. By taking away stories from LGBTQ writers, you then increase the idea that they don't deserve to have that story told about them. By taking away books and stories written about and by people of color, you are therefore taking away the stories of those people of color. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackson Baker is our concluding comment.
Thank you, board members, again, for your time. I truly appreciate the opportunity being able to speak in front of all of you. With that, I'm a student currently at Alta High School. And I just, once again, like many here today, really wanted to speak on the book ban and the importance to me in my everyday life. Autonomy, the right or condition of self-government. I bring up this definition because I believe it summarizes the main points of really what I would like to make clear today. By passing this proposed policy amendment on streamlining the banning of valuable literature, I fear that the autonomy of the student body and their personal academic endeavors is in jeopardy. Let's take an introspection into personal choice. When perusing through the shelves of any library, no student is inherently going out of their way to search for sexually explicit content, other than in the case of where that content has been explicitly pointed out. Students are looking for narratives and stories that they feel they can relate or escape to. Already, our curriculum rotates and revolves around those experiences of the white cis variety, which leads me to the point that none of the books in question currently are books students are forced to read. At the end of the day, the decision comes down to whether or not the student themselves wants to engage with a form of writing or not. While others may wish to pick and choose what books students are able to read, other students like myself and many of my peers want to pick and choose from a wide spectrum of books to read that encapsulate many experiences and validate many identities that are very present in our real world. Our students deserve the opportunity to have their autonomy when they make a selection in our libraries. Parents across the nation should want their children to be able to learn, grow, and experience the wonderful aspects of literature, and not just those that hide the true diversity in books. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you that have taken the time to address the board and to be here with us. And thank you for your respectful and civil remarks. We appreciate the thoughtfulness that you've shared, with which you've shared your ideas and thoughts with us. So again, we thank you. And that concludes our patron comments. Board, next on the agenda are the consent items. I will ask for a motion, and please, in making that motion, will you please read each of the items on the consent agenda?
Okay, I will make that motion. I move to approve the consent agenda. Item A, approval of minutes for November 9th, 2021. Item B, approval of hire and termination reports. Item C, approval of purchasing bids. Item D, approval of student overnight travel. Item E, approval of 2020-21 annual comprehensive financial report and related audit reports. Item F, approval of administrative appointments. Item G, approval of LEA specific licenses. Item H, approval of land trust and TSSP amendment for Ridgecrest Elementary.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I will ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. That motion passes. Next item is item 8A, new business discussion and proposal for emergency school closure days. This is a second reading with possible action. I will turn the time over to Alice Peck from the School Performance Department.
Thank you, President Tingy and board members. I am back this evening for the second reading of the emergency school closure day options. Just as a real quick reminder, currently, if the district needed to close schools due to emergency or inclement weather, the following options are currently available to the Board of Education according to our district calendar for alternate learning. And that would be President's Day, a remote learning day, or the option to extend school year by 1 day. And as the board asked in our last meeting for an additional option to be added to the timeline here, the first option would be for the remote learning day option to be approved by the board for the 2022 school year only. And the second option that you asked for was for that remote learning for all future school years. So with that, I will turn it over for any other questions you have.
Thank you. Board, any questions on this item? Mr. Wrigley.
So if I understand this, that we will continue the option of President Day or just remote learning?
It would just, if you choose remote learning,
As in only?
that would be if that's your choice, you could choose for it to be for this school year only or for all future school years.
And so the President's Day and the extended school year would be deleted from.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make that clear as for the option. The option was to add that, but I didn't know if it wasn't clear as the option to add it in addition. So
yes.
Is there, other than the three options that you gave us originally, there, and I've been on these different committees, there's really not many other options, is there?
There have not been in the past.
So if we do it for 1 year, we can do it for 1 year to be able to have you come before us next year and see your smiling face, or we could just do it for future years and change it if we need to. Is that what you're asking?
That would be your option, yes.
Thank you. And along those lines, I would just like to remind the board that if we do take action in that direction for all future school years, we would also need to give direction that the approved calendars have the language changed on them, as well as language in the guidelines for creating the calendars that exist in our policy. And I believe all of that could be accomplished with this action, but it would need to be specified on that. So any further questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Wrigley.
Question of my fellow board members, is there any reasons against that you could see not just making it ongoing? I'm trying to figure out what the reasons would be to do not to just have it ongoing versus just for 1 year. Maybe have some discussion on that.
Mrs. Arnold?
I can't really think of one reason, and you can always go back and change it. So I don't see that it matters one way or the other way, because we can either vote on it every year or go back and revisit it every year. So.
Any other thoughts?
Ms. Tingy?
Yes, Mrs. Oakes.
I actually agree with Ms. Arnold on that. I feel the same way. I think it makes more sense for us just to streamline it and make that the de facto approach. And then if we feel like in the future we need to change something, then we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay,
If there are no questions, I would like to make a motion that we adopt option 2, remote learning for all future school years. And that would also include changing the language on the calendars and changing the instructions to the calendar committee.
Yeah, the guidelines in the policy that, yes. Is that what you're referring to?
Of course it is.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So, yeah, a motion is in order because this has been listed as possible action. So, is there a second to the motion that has been made? Okay, that motion has been, the motion was made by Mr. Millerberg and the second is by Mrs. Arnold. Okay, any discussion to this motion? Okay, not seeing any discussion. I will just reiterate that Mr. Millerberg, you're not going to like me for this, but will you restate your motion?
It was hard enough to do it once. And you may have to help me on this one. Make a motion that we adopt option 2, remote learning for all future school years, which would include changing the language on the already approved and future calendars to so reflect, and to change the instructions to the calendar committee for future years as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you. And those instructions are included in the calendar development policy. So just for reference on that. Okay. We have a motion and a second and no further discussion. I'll call for a vote on this motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. So at least for the foreseeable future, the go-to plan for emergency school closures will be the remote learning day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board, that concludes our business on the agenda for this meeting. We'll now turn time over for staff comments. We'll start with the superintendent report, Superintendent Robbins, and then business administrator report, Mr. Leon Wilcox.
Thank you, President Tingy. I'd like to invite Jeff Haney up to announce our administrative appointments.
In just a few. There we go. And I'm usually good at that. I'm a person who monitors it too. It may have been my laptop. It was conspiring against me. So congratulations to those who were appointed today. The Board of Education decided during consent that there will be several administrative appointments. There's a new principal at Alta High School. His name is Ken Rowley. He was announced today as the Alta High School principal. This information will be on our website in a few minutes. Ken is currently the assistant principal at Corner Canyon High. He succeeds Dr. Brian McGill, who will leave his post at Alta High School to become the CSD Director of Student Services. Now, many of you may or may not know Ken because he is new to Canyon School District. This is his first year at Canyon School District. He's been working at Corner Canyon High School, but he has been an educator for 26 years, 15 of which were spent as the principal of Juab Junior High. Now, Dr. McGill was selected as the new Director of Student Services after a competitive selection process, and he'll begin his new role in mid-January, which gives him time to coordinate a seamless mid-year transition with Ken. Now, in his new role, Dr. McGill will lead the Canyons District department that was created to provide a system of supports for students, including counseling, health and nursing services, school psychology, and behavior interventions, among other supports. Now, the current Responsive Services Department Administrator, BJ Willer, will work with Dr. McGill in planning and executing the department's mission. In addition, the board has approved the appointment of Matthew Wolford as the new Facilities Services Director. He succeeds Mr. Rick Conger, who has been Canyons District's Facilities and Services Director since the founding of the district in 2009. Mr. Wolford is the Director of Facilities and Operations for the University of Utah's Huntsman Center Institute, and that's a position that he has held since 2015. He has a bachelor's degree from Indiana University and a master's degree from Indiana Wesleyan. Now, he started his career as an HVAC technician in the U.S. Air Force, and he will begin his stint here in the Canyon School District after Mr. Conger retires on December 31st. I've told Leon repeatedly that we should tell Rick that he is prohibited from ever retiring, but Rick says, no, it's time for he and his wife to enjoy a well-deserved retirement. So welcome to the Canyon School District and welcome to their new posts, the folks that you have appointed today as administrators in the Canyons District.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Congratulations to those who were appointed. And also, I just want to thank all those that applied and went through the process. We had some tremendous candidates for all those positions. Just in closing, if I might, I would like to just once again, I made some comments earlier after our policy meeting, but for the record, the titles in question that were spoken about tonight with these books, unfortunately, the word ban has come up over and over. None of these books have been banned. That's an inaccurate statement that was made. These books were simply put on hold while the policy was addressed. And while the policy originally is sound, it was incomplete. In my opinion, it needed to be reviewed for this very reason. And for the record, I want to make it clear, and this is Superintendent Robbins speaking, that I support 100% our students' First Amendment rights to press and to books and to the library. And I think about my own experience as a child, checking out a book and experiencing the wonder and the excitement when you're able to kind of immerse yourself in literature. I also think it's very important to understand that First Amendment rights of students are not unlimited when they come through the schoolhouse door. And this is demonstrated in many different ways. As educators, there are restrictions because they're minors. And so when you think about all the different ways that we act in local parentis in place of parent, I think the balance to this conversation is that we also have a sworn duty to keep our students safe. And for me as superintendent, this is a very challenging, difficult issue, balancing those First Amendment rights to press and to books, and at the same time, protecting our students against material that may be inappropriate for their age. And I think that's an expectation that goes both ways, that our community should have of all of us as educators. So I say that in respect to everyone that's been in attendance tonight. I fully understand the ramifications, of those decisions. I feel like the policy committee has spent tremendous time in looking at this issue from both ways. I actually think that the time that we've spent will become model policy for other districts in the state or around the country for that matter, that are facing this very challenging issue. And I appreciate all of the perspectives. I appreciate Gretchen and our librarians for coming to the table and working with us on this. I appreciate our teachers perspectives, and I appreciate our parents and grandparents' perspectives. I think, as I've said before, we're not the enemy to each other. We are the union. Together, we can, get through this, just like we have any other issue that we have faced during the pandemic. So I look forward to this conversation as it continues to unfold. As tonight we took up for a first reading, just want to express my appreciation to Jeff and to Dan as well. I talked a little bit with Jeff this morning about this policy, and I really appreciate his expertise in really guiding us through the framework and the process of all of this. And I look forward to that continuing. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to the board for your dedication and thoughtfulness as you continue to look at these issues to try to balance the necessity and the needs of all those involved. So I'll close with that tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, thank you, President Tingy. Just as Jeff announced, I just want to welcome Matthew Wolford as our new facilities director. We're excited to have him on board. I appreciate everybody in our facilities department. We had a few apply for this position, and they're just wonderful people, and I just grateful for all of them. I'm grateful for their service, and so look forward to moving on. Life will be different without Rick, but we're looking forward to having Matt join our family. Just speaking of facilities, the Hillcrest parking lot, we will open that tomorrow. So we're excited to open that new parking lot. And we also, Jeff mentioned the Holiday Inn, the musical being this weekend. Hope everybody can get out and see that. I was in the auditorium today, complete. It's just a beautiful facility. So please get out and see that. It'll be wonderful. And the last thing I just want to mention is our hearts are still broken for Jeremy Wardle and his wife, Rebecca. Excuse me, I'm still emotional about this. Their 14-year-old son, James, was tragically died in an accident about 2 weeks ago, a go-kart accident. Our thoughts and prayers are with them. Jeremy's back to work this week. We just appreciate all that he's done. He's helped carry us through this. So just thank you for him, and our thoughts and prayers will continue to be with he and his family.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll have board member comments. Let's start with Mrs. Oakes.
Hi, thank you so much. I wanted to echo a lot of what has been said by both Rick and by Leon. My heart definitely goes out to Jeremy Wardle and his family. There are so many wonderful people that work here at Canyon, and I appreciate their hard efforts. And to hear of such a terribly unfortunate accident to happen in anyone's life is devastating. And then to consider the people that serve so many kids here and to understand, but it's just tough. So I'm thinking a lot about he and his family. I also want to give a shout out to all of the high school drama departments for their incredible musical productions. I got to attend Newsies and also SpongeBob the Musical, which my 8-year-old loved. and I'm hoping to be able to see Holiday Inn this week. So that's so much work, hundreds and hundreds of hours of work, but to see how many kids are involved in those productions and what a large part of the school community they are, it's really incredibly rewarding. I also am incredibly grateful for the opportunity that we have to do strategic planning. As I mentioned before, I've really enjoyed being able to participate in that, and really am excited about what kind of possibilities it will bring for the district moving forward in the future, especially as we talk about innovation and how to be able to really prepare the students of Canyon School District for what's coming rather than what's been done in the past. It really is a look forward, and it's a great opportunity to bring in community perspectives and ideas and to look at what lies ahead. So I want to thank everyone who's been involved in that. I know it's a lot of extra work for the administration, but I do think it will be richly rewarded.
Thank you. Mrs. Schill?
So I just want to start by congratulating all those new appointments that we just made today, and I'm really excited about them. I think the people are going to be great, and our district will just continue to serve our students really well. I also want to thank Leon and his team. I'm on the audit committee, and the auditors did give him a clean report, and they said it's a good thing if it's boring. So it was boring, so it was good. And then also, I'm just excited to go see Beauty and the Beast this weekend, and hopefully, I'm not sure I can make it to the other one, but I'm for sure going to go to Beauty and the Beast. So I also want to just congratulate our high schools on all their plays, and they do an incredible job. So thank you to those students and teachers.
Thank you. Mr. Wrigley?
Thank you for this opportunity. Just a couple things. I've had the opportunity to sit on the strategic policy committee for several years now. Or no, not strategic planning, wrong notes. Policy committee. Yeah. I've got the other on strategic planning here. Policy committee for the last several years. And it's been interesting to be on this committee. I think sometimes people like today are saying as well, if you have a policy, it restricts. I think frequently our policy outlines and gives us more freedom and gives us that opportunity. It's just like having laws. If you have laws, then you have boundaries. So I'm hoping as we move forward with this policy that it's going to meet, as I tried to state in my comments, try to meet both sides in regards to what their concerns are, those concerns of those people who are worried about banning of books and those people that are concerned about what's in the content. Strategic Planning Policy Committee, I've been excited about to sit on that and move forward with that group. The people have been very active in the thing, and I'm looking forward to see what happens from there. I did have an opportunity to attend Newsy with the district's most adamant critic, which is my wife. They tell me I'm getting a new mic in December. Anyway, so and she was really elated at that, and we're looking forward to Holiday Inn. I don't think we've attended anything that she's actually felt that was not fantastic. Often over this last year, we get into this reactive mode, and all we're doing is jumping from one crisis to the next crisis. We had an opportunity to be proactive a couple of weeks ago. Nobody's brought that up. We went to GWAB Innovation Center, and we also got to go to Farmington High School to sort of see exemplary programs of what's going on in education and give us some kind of ideas. And we're starting to do that a little bit to get outside our district and look at what's best or across the state or whatever. It brings a lot of, it's fun. It's fun to do something proactive, to see something other than just dealing with one thing after next, which has been the last couple of years. So I'm thankful for that opportunity. And I think there's not much else going on other than just regular meetings. We do a lot of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Arnold?
So I lost a contact earlier, and I can't decide whether to wear the glasses so I can see you or take the glasses off so I can see the paper, because I've never wore glasses forever, but I luckily had a pair in my car. So when a policeman pulls me over, I can say I have my glasses if I lose a contact, right? Because, anyway, just letting you know, I lost the contact, but now I have the glasses. All right. One thing I want to say is I'm back to the advertising. We still need aides. We still need people to cook in the lunchrooms. We still need custodians. We still need teachers. We still need administrators. We still need, what else do we need? Bus drivers. We need you. We're pleading for you. We will do anything for you. Please, everybody in the neighborhoods of Canyons, come and help us out with these positions, especially, if you're retired in those positions and you're bored being home, although I keep being told that once you retire, you're never bored because there's more to do than when you had before. But please come. And then I just wanted to say that also, it is the season of great stress. Let us all have mercy and grace during this next month, to the people we work with, to the people who are our neighbors, to the strangers on the street. we need it more now than ever before. So my goal is try to be more merciful and share more grace. And I hope that, I hope that we all try really hard, because I think it's needed more than ever. I have a son who just started for Salt Lake Police Department, and he shares a few stories with me. And I'm thankful I'm in the classroom wrestling kids. I just have to tell you that, and not on the streets right now. And so as we go forward and we keep looking at these hard things, I'm making decisions. I agree with Steve. Policy comes down from federal laws, state laws, and then district making policies. And I don't really think they restrict. I do think that they give us a lot more opportunities to be flexible and to be fair to all, because it could be that we would be fair to none or to only some. The other thing, I wanted to congratulate the new appointments also, and tell all of the high schools who are doing plays right now that I know that was a great sacrifice on their part, and that they put in massive hours, and thank you for doing that. I know that the elementary teachers are also still putting in massive hours for letters, and I heard from a few teachers in Canyons about their Thanksgiving was spent almost all 4 days working on letters to get ready for, I guess, another all-day meeting that we're having. So thank you for all that sacrifice too. I want to thank the board for all their perspectives and ideas and thoughts. It's so much nicer to have 7 of us sitting here visiting and talking and discussing and making decisions, so that it falls on all 7 of us when we make the decision. So just thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Millerberg.
Thank you. I just want to start with Amber's comment about the boring audit report. The thing you have to understand with CPAs is that they are boring people, and that it's just an occupational hazard that goes with it. Dr. Robbins, thank you so much for addressing the issue regarding the library books that are currently being reviewed. It is a fine balance between our constitutionally guaranteed First Amendment rights and safeguarding the students that we have in our district. And I feel like you are in the process of striking that balance, so thank you. It seems like since October 14th, I've been what I would refer to as a road warrior, and it's now time to settle down, and I should be a more regular attender in person in the future for school board meetings. I was able to attend Newsies at Corner Canyon, and I really enjoyed the production. Corner Canyon does an excellent job in the performing arts. I am looking forward to later this week going to Hillcrest High School, and especially to see the production of Holiday Inn. But I am really excited to be there also to see what can be done in the new facility at Hillcrest. Very exciting. It's been mentioned before, I believe Leon mentioned it. Over the years, the school board member, and you attend a couple of meetings a month, you don't really get to know a lot of people. And I would like to express my appreciation for Rick Conger and how much he has done, and also his ability to have become a good friend. I consider Rick a friend. He was one, when they divided the district and I first came on the board, that learned my name, called me by name, and included me in what was going on. And so, Rick will be missed. Also, Jeremy Wardell. he is another person that I would consider on my list of friends at the district. And the tragedy that happened with his son is just absolutely heartbreaking. Great people, and I have nothing but love and sympathy for Jeremy and his family. And I believe that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you. Okay. On my list of things to mention, you all have mentioned them multiple times. So just add my name to the comments that everyone else has made. But I want to reiterate something I said a little bit earlier about how much we appreciate the patrons that come and address the board. It is very, for me, it's inspiring to hear their thoughtfulness and their articulateness, and if that's a word, and especially the students. I'm just so encouraged when the students are engaged enough that they come and address us, and it gives me hope for the future that they will continue to engage in public matters of importance to them, and that they will do so in a very thoughtful manner. So I appreciate everyone's work and efforts to help keep this district moving forward, even in challenging and difficult times. And so with that, unless there's anything else, I will call the meeting adjourned and wish you all a great rest of the evening.